Here we are, here we are, here we are. For another rock and roll march to the mountain from my neighborhood. Passing parallel to my old neighborhood, and nothing that I want to go back to, but okay, there's 24/7 for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, electricians, the bakers, all those. Watch when you cross the street so that you cross brutally, and that's how we're gonna go drilling all the way to the mountain, my second home. Grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got paid my cell phone bill, and got some halva in the backpack, purchased on the budget some halva. I found really, first time that I tried that type of halva, and I bought an old one, so I bought a little bit of halva for the Sabbath weekend, and of course that's how we gotta get doing on that drill to get it. And as we go now from my new neighborhood, passing parallel to my old neighborhood, I guess when you cross on the other side, but nothing that I want to go back to, but kind of basically in a way on this side of the street is my new neighborhood, my old neighborhood, and whatever the case may be, you know, change a lot, and change sometimes is good, comes to blood, sweat and tears, and takes years and years and years for something to adjust, adapt, but sometimes we of course get to new types of living and types of lifestyles. And I always recommend working regularly, regular fitness activity, you know, because it is my memory, my medicine and therapy of choice, and I always work out, train, exercise, and working out, train, and exercises has been, is, and will be my medicine and therapy of choice as I go on the drill. And always thankful, grateful, although financially stressed. My only stress now is financial. That's my only stress now is financial. That's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get doing with that, and that's how we gotta get doing on that double trouble, you know, for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, and the firefighters, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food. And that's how we gotta get drilling here, all the way to the mountaintop, I guess, for something which we do and something which we gotta be stretching a bit. I guess sometimes it's always good to stretch a bit, although I'm been commencing my march already an hour and 44 minutes in. An hour and 44 minutes. I didn't start filming right away because I didn't want to film in the shopping, but we begin our journey to the mountain. Yours truly, independent artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical analyst, and theorist, and philosopher. And Aspie have Asperger's, so I'm neurodivergent. You know, my neurodivergence makes me, of course, that I am a bit on the awkward, weird side. And lay that rainbow 24/7 for the dream, the dancing goddess, and the dragon kingdom, manifesting always for the 63, the 10, the 50, and the 3. I got a bit of pounds in the backpack, so it's gonna add a little bit of weight, and that's how we gotta get drilling on that, for the go, for the left, for the right, for the W, and for all those involved in the production, distribution of food. We gotta get it on that dribble, and always gotta be saluting the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the welders, daycare workers who change some diapers. It is Friday before the Sabbath as we go. Construction workers who build buildings like this. Help yours truly build the four buildings which yours truly wills to build something super important. To build the four right truly where it is now in the Montreal Hawk Island. And of course, be prudent when you cross the street, you know. It's another hot day. I guess heat wave continues a little bit. It went down yesterday and the day before. Now it kind of went back up, but it doesn't bother me, you know. I kind of like the heat, and it's kind of heat wave up and down. We had a lot of heat waves this summer, you know, but it's always got important to stay hydrated. And saluting all to who are doing that trucking, the truckers now, the welders, the plumbers, electricians, those train conductors across the North American Collective. You know, as a philosopher, artist, athlete, I was putting for the North American Collective Workers' Party. Let's find and lay the financial, of course, Concordium, public-private partnership, of course, to lay the foundations for the public-private partnership for the North America Citizen Integrated, of course, plateaus where we're going to, of course, function together as an integral Republican Imperial component in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. It's got to start with me today. And, you know, as a philosopher, artist, athlete, and independent geopolitical, theoretical analyst, and theorist, and, you know, I have this Asperger's, so sometimes my communication style can be a bit on the awkward side and the weird side. And on the awkward, weird side, sometimes when we have a little bit of more interactions, when we are discussing certain elements or certain solutions or certain philosophies or whatever topic might be. Aspies, you know what, if you don't know what Asperger's is, as I marched today, special dedicated for the Empire Special Summit. calling for a special summit September 11, 2025, 2026 special summit. That's what it is. And for the World Peace Summit for our empire, my way to fuse Canada, United States best in the Integral Plateau, and all the citizens, of course, as I am a Quebecer Canadian, got that Canada tatted up. Don't ask me when I got that title, because as far as my memory goes, before spring 2014, before spring 2014 is something which you can't. Before spring 2014 is something that you can't, of course, populate and, of course, integrate in all the aspects of the society that we are, of course, today. An integral part of our well-being is, of course, to get it on the go with that, or get it on those. Always good to turn your heads left and right here. Be prudent. Here's kind of a dangerous corner, and see how my ASPI brain works. Now I'm trying to calculate, of course, the speed, my speed, and the distance from here to that. It's a few yards, right? If we calculate the distance and the distance between the car to that, there's a distance co-equivalency. So of course there's a real distance which can be calculated. So this calculation, of course, is a mental calculation which you can engage in. It's something which ASPIs were peculiar with, and that's Asperger's. Sometimes our brain, of course, focuses on mathematics. So what I was calculating in my brain would be the speed and the velocity of the cars, right? So the cars travel at a certain distance. And how much was the distance for me to cross and my fellow citizen there for him, her to cross? And I calculated that it's better to pause than to proceed. And it was a higher risk in my estimation, because there were several cars, and of course there was the length that it was to traverse was quite a few yards. I would estimate anywhere between, if I am to say, maybe 15 meters or about 20 yards or so, maybe 18, 17 yards, between 15 and 25 yards, somewhere like that. Of course it's still an estimation nonetheless, because that is just Asperger's. Sometimes, we, in our minds, just mathematical. And me as an individual, sovereign ASPI, who's marching today for all my brothers and sisters of the North American Collective, and for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the electricians, the plumbers, and not always. The electricians and the plumbers, not always, not always. The electricians and the plumbers, and of course all the bakers, those who are involved in the production, distribution of food, and marching for our coming of our empire here for the 63. And I'm gonna title it, I guess, dedicated to canola producers, bakers, farmers, construction workers, plumbers, electricians, those of course involved in the fast food, producing that food, distributing those hamburgers, cheeseburgers on the train conductors, now how many truckers crossing the road. And I guess sometimes you can validate and do it a little bit of that mental calculations yourself. So Asperger's, aspiness manifests sometimes with weird, odd characteristics. So I live with this neurological mental divergent condition, and I have to say that it's been only about 3.5 years since I've accepted it, because for years and years and years and years, many individual citizens, sovereign citizens, have, of course, with some health experience in the healthcare system, have, of course, diagnosed me with Asperger's, HFA, also known as high functioning autism. And for years and years and years, it's been more than 7, 8, 9 years now, but I didn't want to accept it, for the longest time, because it's like a stigma and there's still a lot of work to be done. But what's important to know and to be that Asperger's, it's not an illness. It's not a disease. And just because last week, of course, I was, correcting somebody, and 2 weeks before I was also correcting somebody, because you made the mistake to say, but when I had in the discussion last week, I was discussing, of course, several things. And we're engaged in a conversation last Tuesday, not this Tuesday, the other one last week, of course, where we're discussing coffee price, because the coffee was reduced. And I said I never tried this of course, this peculiar coffee, which we have, of course, this peculiar coffee to get it on the go with that, and to get it on the left, on the right, and all that, of course, to be on the protruded side of course, all our calculations. And we estimated it both together that it's a good deal to buy it, but we have never tried it before. So we had a conversation surrounding coffee. So at one point I was too close, so I said, of course, I'm going to take a step back, and I explained what I have, and I have Asperger's. And he said, oh yeah, I know the disease. And I said, no. And I said, He said, oh yeah, I know, it's a disease with the brain. I said, no. And then he autocorrected. He thought a few seconds and said, no, it's actually a neurodivergent. So that a neurodivergent condition, a neurodivergent condition, he says. So I said, yes, because that's what it is. It's not a disease. So don't quantify Asperger's as a disease. I'm not a disease, but that's how we gotta get on that drill with that, and that's how we gotta get it on the go with the XYZ, and we're gonna get it for that liberty to get it on that popping for the left and the right and in the center to fully understand and comprehend, of course, all the dimensions which we have today. And that's how we're gonna get drilling with that, and always comprehensive and integralized in all our well-being in the status where we are accorded that we are different. So this difference as an individual sovereign citizen with Asperger's makes me prone to certain characteristics and weird, odd, strange behavior in the way we impart language or the way we communicate. But besides that, it has its strengths. However, it can be, of course, very, very, very difficult. But we have to build bridges between myself as a neurodivergent, somebody who lives with Asperger's, and you, the vast majority of the 99.56%. 99% of the population, you are neurotypicals, and you look at the world in a different way. So we, Aspies, we look the way in a different way, and we have our special interests. And of course, those special interests are recorded, of course, in the plurality of the special interests, where we are engaged with super intensity, super concentration, super focus, super, of course, dedication, focus, and intensity, and very high focus, of course, on the margins of the Appalachians where we are, and where we discord, of course, to have the productive faculties of our psyche. So our psychic abilities, our mental faculties, our bodies also involved. We are super intense, super focused when we are engaged in those special interests, whether studying, learning, or whatever, doing the activities in the special interests. We are super focused, and that super focus, super concentration in those special interests can, of course, be to the detriment of other things in life, such as social affairs, such as other things, of course, maybe doing other things to the detriment, because they take the vast majority of our time is focused on a daily ritualized like manner with for years and years and years, I have these ritual-like routines, and it's working out, training, exercising, doing rock and roll. I write rock and roll, I create rock and roll songs verbally, orally, and in written form, as an artist, athlete. And of course, the other one, of course, which it is of course, dancing is my favorite sport. So that trinity of activities is what I do most on a daily basis, sometimes for hours and hours and hours and hours. I can spend time revising, of course, geopolitical news from the world, whatever world affairs, which all includes in the geopolitical sphere, because, of course, geopolitics encompasses a vast array, of course, of disciplines in many ways. Political science, international relations, and history and culture, and many things such as even labor movements and etc. It's a whole universe. And even here now, my event, 15th of August, celebrating. It's actually a celebration because I don't know when exactly, if I left on the 15th of August, or if I reached Vancouver on the 15th of August with my anonymous friend in 2017, so 8 years. Whether we left today or we reached, I guess it's kind of the celebration when in 2017 when I crossed Canada coast to coast, ocean to ocean. That event really changed my life. Prior to that event, of course, was depressed, was suicidal. So was depressed and was suicidal prior to that event. Depressed, suicidal, and this affects Aspies, people with Asperger's like myself, also known as HFA, high functioning autism, 9 times more. Keep that in mind. It affects Aspies 9 times more than neurotypicals. 9 times more than neurotypicals. 9 times more than neurotypicals. 9 times. So for every neurotypical of you, who are the 99.56%, there's 9 times more Aspies who suffer from depression and being suicidal, So the depressive aspect and the suicidal aspect, I've been there. I have a beautiful garden. This quadruples my smile. Oh wow, look at that. So that is a problem for Aspies. And these routines, ritualized like routines, can be, of course, that we are affected by these special interests, also known as obsessive interests. But utilizing the terminology obsessive does not render anybody justice. So as I'm celebrating today, I gotta check the tickets. I got the tickets, of course, when we went by 3.5 days by bus. We left Montreal to Vancouver in August 2017, and September we went by train. I got those tickets too. It took 25 hours and 44 minutes from Halifax to Nova Scotia to reach Halifax, Nova Scotia from Montreal. It was a 25 hours and 44 minutes, so more than a day. It was a little bit more, by an hour and 44 minutes, more than 24 hours, which 24 hours being that it's a day. That's what it took. So in 2017 I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event really changed my whole life around. You know, I turned my life around, and of course I turned my life around, and that event made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians. So of course I consider her as family, and that is of course the strongest esprit de corps, which of course I've proposed to be and proposed to do on the appellation of the event in my life and my anonymous friends. So I'm auctioning those tickets by $1 million each, to give some compensation, I guess, funds, and you know, to a friend who wasn't my friend because of the money, but that's how we got, and that's how we gotta get those drills, and that's how we have to get on the go. And that is something which we have to remind ourselves of, the situational complexes where we are today, because I live carpe diem every day, you know, since I died of COVID in 2020, February 2020. Between February 2020 and March 2020, more than 5 years ago, I was really sick. I was struck by COVID. I got triple vaxxed, and like I mentioned, because I said my tats, Canada tat, all the tats, I have trouble remembering my life prior to 2014 spring. But 2014 spring, being that we are August, that makes more than 11 years and 4 months now, and a few weeks, 3 weeks, almost 5 months, right? Because around, so let's say spring is between February and April, right? 2014. Yeah, so more than 11 years and 4 months ago. So I used to live in a moldy place, on the ground type of moldy place with a small basement. It was like a tight prison, small prison cell. I say I served my time, but it wasn't really a prison cell, but it was like a small prison cell, and that's where I lived. You know, it was like a small prison cell, and of course that small prison cell, but it was an apartment. It wasn't a small prison cell, but it was an apartment. Well, underground basement. It was, even the kitchen was inside. It was so small. I didn't even have a kitchen. It was a stove, not even like a stove with inside the room, and the bathroom was super small. I didn't have even a bathtub, and it was like a prison type of bathtub. You know, I did not not have a bathtub. I have like a small shower, and even that was like a tight small prison cell. You know, even that was like a tight small prison cell. You know, so even that was like a tight small prison cell. So of course, ever since then, when I moved, I thought it was 2016, but it ends up it was 2015. So I didn't move in 2016, I moved in 2015. Ever since that time, of course, when I crossed Canada, before that I was depressed and suicidal for a few years, and I guess I spent a few years with one foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries. If I go retrieve my books from the libraries, I bet you that between summer 2014 and summer 2019, within those 5 years, most of my books were vis-a-vis, related to geopolitics, 90% for sure. Because even though I have retrograde amnesia, it's symptoms, retrograde RA. So I don't know if before 2014 I was a junkie. Was I a junkie? I lost some memory. Was I a junkie? I lost some memory. Was I a junkie? So I lost some memory. Sometimes alcoholic beverages. So if I was drinking, and I don't know how many years I lived in that small moldy, there was lots of mold, MOLD, you know, like black mold, greenish, reddish type of whitish, yellowish type of mold. That mold, MOLD, which is, you know, maybe I was doing drugs, hard drugs. I haven't done even weed, cannabis. It's legal here since 2019 in Canada. Cannabis I haven't done in years. Well, actually I did. I smoked like 4 puffs a few months ago, or how much, I don't even know how much. We're very right. So I have bought that I still have from what I purchased about like 44 months ago or so, you know, more than 3.5 years ago. So I still have leftovers, in other words. So I don't do, but I don't know if I did prior to, I don't know how many years I lived there, in that underground, small, moldy place, like a tight, small prison cell, but maybe I did lots of drugs. Maybe I was a junkie, maybe I was an alcoholic, maybe I drank so much alcohol, maybe I was an alcoholic. What I do know is that I got plenty of scars, and I was attacked by surprise, and I fell, hit my head on the concrete, I was attacked, vicious attack. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I fell, hit my head on the concrete, had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder. Had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder, and was bloodied up. Went to the Jewish General Hospital. I got a deadline before September 11th to go retrieve the archives, and I don't know exactly what year it was, but they put me on some meds. They cracked back my dislocated right shoulder, right arm. My shoulder was busted up and was bloodied up, and I survived that vicious surprise attack. And I don't know, since I can't remember. I have trouble remembering my life prior to 2014. I graduated high school. I have a high school diploma. I can't find my birth certificate. But I found some documents. So I lived in Canada for at least all my life, I guess. All my life. But gotta check for the birth certificates and whatever the case may be. And this is my home, you know, in this life and another life. I'm also a mystic. I believe in reincarnations, and this is really because I was born in the USA 3 times post 76, once as a woman, twice as a man. That's why today I get that 50-50, my past lives incarnations. And like I said before 2014, maybe I was, sometimes when you drink alcohol, when you're an alcoholic for a few years and you get off of it, you can lose memory, or trauma to the head can cause it, or even hard drugs can make you lose, of course, the memory which we have, of course, to get it on the go with that. And that's what we have to get doing on that left right Z, and we gotta get on that appellation to get back to health, as I have just healed a lot, and you know, and just live with my scars. With Asperger's, you cannot medicate Asperger's, because Aspies, you know, it's a celebration today for me, crossing Canada coast to coast. And Asperger's, being an Aspie, has of course enabled me, of course, being an Aspie. It's a lifelong condition. There's no medication for Asperger's, because you live with it. Right? You live with it. You live your whole life with Asperger's. It's not a disease, you know. So you cannot medicate Asperger's. So you live with it. But it has the main problems, 3 main problems. The 3 main problems for Aspies are as follows, and in whatever order, I guess, you can place them, but nonetheless, these are the 3 main problems for Aspies. So Aspies, due to our characteristics, which can sometimes be strange, awkward, and weird, abnormal to the, again, we have to build bridges. We have to build small bridges, medium bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. Of course, those are categories of bridges which need to be built between us, because I don't have antagonistic, resentful feelings versus the majority of the population. You know, I don't have antagonistic majority population. I don't have antagonistic feelings towards the majority of the population, you know, but of course it is something which we have to also say, and we have, of course, to regulate our internal beings, of course, where we are to get, of course, the appellation of all the things which we have, of course, to do in our sequences of our integration of our life within the society. And gotta sing some rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue. They're not perfect, I'm not perfect, they're not perfect, you're not perfect, but I gotta sing that rock and roll also for my brothers and sisters who do their criminal rehabilitation. I always sing that rock and roll for my brothers and sisters, of course, who turned their life around. Who did a mistake, did a second mistake, even a third, if it's not the gravity situation of, doing it recidivism and, whatever the case may be, A, B, C, D. But if you turn your life around, I always gotta sing that rock and roll. Proud of you, whoever you are, if you turn your life around, from living a life in crime and doing bad and whatever the case may be. I'm not discussing about if you steal a piece of bread. I would probably be a judge, if you come with me if you stole a piece of bread because you needed to eat, because that's different. But if you stole champagne, you didn't need that champagne. If you stole some sausages or tomato sausages, of course, whatever the case is, and you need to build. And I gotta appreciate this little garden there. So if you stole, look at those two helicopters. See now my Aspie brain, how it functions. I try to calculate the distance. I know that they're going southeast, maybe they're going towards the border. They're red, and we need to get a few hundred of those coast to coast, and 300 new mega trucks, which can be transported up to the contingency, of course, of 300 soldiers. We need to build 300 trucks that are able to build and be contingency cohorts of 300 legions, because the 63 we gotta split in 300 legions for the SSD, as we're gonna integrate the FBI with the RCMP, and of course the RCMP with the FBI, and of course we're gonna integrate the security forces of Canada and United States into the Imperial Republican complex together. So back to what I was saying, Asperger's, of course, it is you have to build bridges, and I gave those type of bridges: small, medium, large, extra large. Within those four categories, of course, within those four categories of bridges, we have to build different bridges, and those are the four main categories. I guess they have to be subdivided into different categories of bridges, but those four main ones. So those is like fries. When you go to order some fries, so you might order small fries, medium fries, big fries, large fries. So those four categories, also for coffee it applies. So you might order a small coffee, large coffee, extra large, medium size. So those are four categories, which are general categories. Within those categories, you can subdivide them, So you can subdivide those categories by other categories. So such as these bridges that have to be built, because Asperger's, us, we are different, we see the world differently. So just like I said, sometimes we calculate mathematics, right? So you might see, for example, this door. I might see the surface, and I might try to calculate the dimensions and the surface area of this door in my head. So things that have to do with also mathematics, such as percentages, calculations, and I'm pretty good at percentages. I'm not a mathematical genius, anything like that. I don't purport to be, of course, but it's something which I have to get doing and understand, of course, which we have to get conclusive about. So, of course, this situation, which it is, of course, we have, 4 seconds. So now I have to step it up. So this is Asperger's, Sometimes it can be with the quantifiable, with the values, of course, and the quantification, of course, of the values is the valuation where we can, of course, calculate in our mind certain things which have to do with mathematics. Like I said, for example, I'll give you an example. You look at this apartment, if I would know, wouldn't ask you, would say, hey, how many buildings do you think, how many units do you think it has? And they would try to calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, and then times it on the other side. Or maybe we would say, I think it has about 50. And then what's the medium cost? And then we try to calculate some mathematics, just exchange in mathematics. So that is just the Asperger brain, which of course we're different, right? So this difference sometimes is obvious, and sometimes we can be very difficult to fully appreciate also, because I gotta give a salutation to my anonymous friend. We can be pretty intense, pretty focused, and whatever the case may be, we can be pretty intense, pretty focused, and the calculation, of course, is something which we have, of course, to, in our minds, do that. So Aspie's brain are mutated. We have these mutations at the microscopical level. It's like transistors, right? Think about in terms of transistors. the nanoscale, microscale. They're not. These mutations are not visibly outside of the cranium. Think about it like microchips. They're tiny, small, right? And the transistors on the nanoscale are even smaller. So in such a way, you have to visualize these mutations. And again, what causes Asperger's, is inconclusive. It's either genetic, hereditary, biological, or environmental. So this environmental matter or hereditary biological matter is, of course, just that to say that Asperger's doesn't have a conclusive or origin. The cause of Asperger's, in other words, the cause of Asperger's is not 100% clarified, is not 100% clear. It's not 100% what exactly causes Asperger's. There's no consensus about the cause of Asperger's, and there's no medication, again, because it's not a disease, so there's no medication. I have to always be aware of these characteristics and try to work on them so that I can continue to build bridges, whether small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large. Within those four categories are the four categories, but generally those are the types of bridges which we have to build with each other, right? Sometimes it can be more difficult depending, because you are the 99% and we're the less than 1%. By Providence, 63 Summit Way. 63 to the Summit Way, that is the 10, the 50, and the 3. See, this is another aspect thing. We might focus on certain details, odd, weird details like that. So these odd, of course, details are, of course, conclusive to, of course, the preponderance of how we operate in the world. And sometimes our communication can be, we can utilize too much academic, scholarly, sophisticated, and intellectual, more scholarly technical terms or such matters of the way we speak, when it's not really required for finding a solution or for being apprehensive in certain manners that we can be fully understood and fully work together. Because I don't have antagonistic feelings or any resentful feelings towards the majority, 99%, who are neurotypicals, and we have great things to offer. And myself, when it comes to, of course, some rock and roll, especially dancing, some sports and fitness, and of course I created my own workout training program system back in 2019. And of course, before I discuss the three main problems for Aspies, I'm going to, of course, discuss the three main problems, and then I'm going to jump into geopolitics, which is my special interest, also known as obsessive interest. So, of course, here's kind of where my old neighborhood, when I cross there, I'm in my old neighborhood. So the three main problems for Aspies are lack of friends. We don't have a lot of friends. And I don't want to waste nobody's time. Just don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. And that's it, that's all. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Because I made a lot of friends, lost a lot of friends. Because Aspies were different, so it's hard for us to have friends, long-term friends, because of misunderstandings and these differences, which can sometimes be hard for neurotypicals to fully accept, fully even appreciate. Got to give a shout out to my anonymous friend, who, of course, my anonymous friend gave me a gift. 2 books on autism and Asperger's, and 1 book was rented for me 4 times from the library, and I read it a few times intensely, especially certain paragraphs, which, of course, the 4 times that I read it, it's called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. So, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, the book is called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. It's a great book, which I recommend for Aspies and neurotypicals as well. So if you want to learn about Asperger's, and it opened my eyes of how I am vulnerable, and many Aspies were vulnerable. So I have to learn, because of this shield. I have to build these shields and fully understand that we're different, and so certain people know that or become aware of that sometimes really fast, and we might be, of course, in a position where we can be vulnerable to certain certain situations we can be vulnerable, of course, we can be taken advantage of, or XYZ, because of sometimes how we look at the world and how we discuss. Sometimes we're more direct and honest, if you will, but of course there's some things which you have to, of course, integrate and fully appellate in all our dimensions where we are, of course. So that is just Asperger. So this is a condition. It's a neurological mental divergent condition, which of course affects about 0.44% of the population. So 0.44% of the population is not a lot of people. You might, of course, say, wow, that's not a lot. That's why a lot of people even conflated and mistaken, of course, for being an illness, a malady. And see, for example, how my Asperger brain works. If you check many of my videos, and again, friends with benefits only, if you're a man or woman, 18 plus, black or white. I've been in the open LGBTQ for many, many, many years, and that's what it is with that. And of course, here I see now my brain functions differently. Now my Aspiness kicks in parallel to this point event in time. Of course, point event in time where I see, of course, the sun and this beautiful highway which connects the north. They're heading north, and the satellites are heading south. So I'm trying to figure out now across all North America, across Canada, United States, Montreal, across the 10, the 50, and the 3, how many, of course, of the trucks are carrying bacon, cheese, lettuce this Friday, romaine lettuce, bacon, cheese, or whatever they're carrying, of course, now across the North American Collective, and saluting them, sending them some loving and some rock and roll. And of course, we have the dictum and the appellation that we are dependent and even open to potential espionage and sabotage because of our infrastructure, of course, the infrastructure plateaus that we are now engaged in, and this has been built for decades and decades and decades and decades, all throughout the 20th century, and because we made powerful enemies as well. So salute, love to the truck. I don't know, what does it have in it? Bacon, cheese, eggs, or bread? How many XYZ are carrying bread and cheeses, and of course other goods, of course, across North America. Think about it. There's a definite number now of all the trucks that are, of course, going east, west, and north and south by the thousands. By the thousands, by the thousands, by the thousands, by the thousands. Definitely by the thousands, if you think about it. Right? Not just across Montreal, but across North America as a whole. Across North America as a whole. So, if you think of a number, that number might not be precise, but you can make an estimation, because if I see 1 or 2 here just in this span of a second, so we have to calculate distance and time, then, but sure, population center, so there are variables, so it will be maybe a close. But then we would have to say from what distance, and let's say that if we include Canada, United States, now how many trucks are carrying, let's say, just edible goods, whether they're, because we're going to have to be less specific, basically, because those numbers exist, so that knowledge exists, right? There's an exact amount of course, bacon now, there's an exact amount of eggs now, there's an exact amount of lettuce, there's an exact amount of food, there's an exact amount of canola, exact amount of XYZ, of bread, butter, canola oil, all the goods that are now being transported across the plateau. So see, we're going to get back to how much is being transported, but just to say that we have 3 problems, and maybe I should go straight. Should I go straight towards the sun? I guess so, eh? Let's rock and roll towards the sun. Well, we could go parallel by that. I guess we could. Yeah, let's go. Although, because we went the other day, we went by here, but now we could also go. Let's go. I guess I changed my mind a little bit, and we're going to go by the other side and go in it a bit like that. So I guess I'm going to get some more sun. So there's a definite number, right? So back to the number before we're going to get to the number of trucks. Now, of course, there's a real number in real time now at this point event in my life, of course. But of course, the problem is, of course, the main 3 problems, which of course Aspies we have and we share, of course, are the lack of friends. We don't have a lot of friends, Aspies. Aspies generally don't have a lot of friends, right? Aspies don't generally have a lot of friends. The other problem is, of course, the high depression and suicidal rate. The high depression and suicidal rate affects Aspies disproportionately by a big proportion, 9 times higher. The other problem is high unemployment. So these 3 problems affect Aspies in a major way. So high unemployment, which stands at 80%, right? Stands at 80%. The unemployment is super high. 80%, that's 4 out of 5. Myself and many Aspies, myself included, I had many jobs in the past 7 years. Many jobs. But of course, I've lost the jobs. Was the job's employment was 4 months, a few weeks, a few months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever the case may be. So losing jobs, not being able to hold a job is because of this difference, and because we just don't get, things like gossip. We just don't get things like gossip, gossip and stuff like that. It's hard for our brain to process it. So when you're in a workplace and you hear somebody, you might block, you might not really know what to say, and you might deviate from the subject, and you might cause, it's hard. This social awareness is more hard for us because our brain is different, so we see the world differently. So basically that it is how it's manifesting, just that's the manifestation. So Asperger's, again, is not a disease. It's not a disease. It's a neurological mental divergent condition. So this divergent condition makes Aspies predisposed to that special type of interests which preoccupy our whole daily routines. And here, because I entered my own neighborhood for years and years and years and years and years, for me it's been the holy ritual, we have ritual like routines. It's been geopolitics 24/7. Sports and fitness, dancing is my favorite sport. And after I crossed Canada coast to coast, I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. I lost between 80 and 93 pounds, so I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. And I got out of my depression. I got plenty of scars, was suicidal and lonely, you name it. But now I'm joyous in my King the Pope the Sun. And I got my weird spirituality. Bury me with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey. A third of me, of course. A third of me buried. A third of me, of course, in New Jersey. A third of me at the city of the pyramids. And a third of me at top Mount Royal. Mount Royal. So that is just what it is. And here we got to turn our heads left and right when we cross the street brutally. That is just what we have to do in the Conquer Italy, where we have, of course, the appellation of the things where we are now. As the sun is getting big, stronger, it seems every year we got more heat waves. Europe and Canada, North America, many places across the world have been hit with not just heat waves, but tsunamis and different type of more hardcore weather, I guess, is hitting us, in many ways, shapes, or form that maybe before it wasn't hitting us in the same manner. So those are the three main problems for Aspies. The lack of friends. That's why for me it's friends with benefits only from now on. I don't will to waste nobody's time. Don't waste mine, I won't waste yours. And it's friends with benefits only. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Cross the street brutally. Turn your head left and right when you cross the street. Turn your heads left and right when you cross the street. Turn your heads left and right when you cross the streets. That is what it is. And turn your heads left and right. And that is what we got. And that's what we got to get also honest with the high depression and suicidal rates. And I lived that. It was 9 times. Aspies are 9 times higher to be, of course, 9 times higher. See, that's a fast food truck. Fast food truck. Fast food truck right there, see? Fast food truck. So all the fast food trucks, then we get subcategories, But nonetheless, there's a definite number pertaining to all the foods. The food that is in the trucks, as we try to estimate before. It could be in the thousands, the number. So lack of friends. Unemployment stands for, this is 80%, even more than 80% unemployment for Aspies. You realize that is totally unacceptable, eh? That's 4 out of 5. So the problem is, I have had many jobs, many employments, it's just keeping them because of this difference. Sometimes we can be intense, concentrated, and we can also be a bit clumsy sometimes, and we can also say things more directly, We'll kind of unfiltered, if you will. And it's not that we will to offend or to harm. Social-culturally, we can, social-culturally, we could be, we can offend. And it's not because we mean to offend. It's not because of volition. It's because our brains are, the brains are different. Our brain is different. And so we see the world differently. So the way we think, the way we view the world is different. And so that is, of course, one of the main motives of why sometimes we just can get in trouble or can offend, of course, certain people in certain circumstances where we might offend certain people and citizens when we are, of course, engaged in whatever engages that we are to live with. So that is just how we are. And the lack of friends my solution is friends with benefits. I don't want to waste your time, don't waste mine. And pledge your allegiance, to our family, and thinking of going straight into the sun, I guess. But I guess we're gonna turn here and gonna take a good turn, maybe turn right there and go straight up. I guess we're gonna be parallel to the sun. So friends with benefits only for me. That is why, of course, it's super important to quantify, to totally understand the point of view and the points of view, which sometimes, because of this difference, we see the world differently, and so we are engaged with the world in a different manner. So our engagement with the world, of course, is different because of this difference. So this difference, of course, is of course something which we quantify and we appellate, of course, in all the dynamics where we are, of course, situational awareness. That is something which we have to get doing with that. So all of the dynamics, all of our circulatory wellness and well-being is proposition to being understood, really, because I don't require lots of support. My support really is minimal. My support really is minimal that I require. I don't really require any support much for the understanding part, and just people have to let me know and let people ASPs know. ASPs have to be, of course, let know and fully understood, of course, that they have to be appellated, of course, and we have to integrate. Not necessarily integrate fully, because Asperger's cannot be medicated. So the integration is by building these bridges, and we have lots to offer. Of course, the lots to offer is what I put on the table, of course, part of my dream. Friends with benefits only, 18 plus, black or white or black, woman, man. You want to be friends with benefits, we can do that gridiron, rainbow rock and rolling, and that's about it. That's how we do, and that's, of course, something which we have to do and something which we have to get drilling, So that is just something which we got to get doing. That is what it is, and that is what is. Some of those. Some of them. Yeah. And I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, I'm somebody who doesn't like violence. Judgment Day. Judgment Day. Is that? So that's somebody where we have to be. That's where we have to be, and so we gotta get that drill, So basically, of course, in the plurality of the situation where we are now, I am somebody who doesn't like violence, But I am hyper vigilant. And of course, we're gonna play only that defense. We're gonna only play that defense. We only play that defense, So that's what it is with that, and that's all we got, and that's how you gotta get on that rock and roll. So of course, all the philosophies and the documentation, of course, are proponent, of course, to be in the situational things, of course, where we have the aspect, of course, to get on the go and all the situational compositions is, of course, that I'm somebody who doesn't like violence, but I am hyper vigilant because I lived it. I was attacked by surprise viciously, and I guess somebody tried to take me out. I would have not voted Donald Trump, but I guess we have something in common, not the silver spoon born part, because I moved where I lived there with nothing really, and I don't even know if I had a backpack or if I have anything besides my high school diploma, besides other characteristics that I have over there, besides other things, but that's it. But I guess somebody tried to take him out as well, and I guess that's the point where we got that in common, and we got to build a new table here. I guess we're going to build a new table, kind of United States, a 50-50 Democratic Republican table for the Empire, the Empire, of course, in the visibility, of course, of all the transnational interests which we have, of course, in the component of all the well-being which we have, of course, the wellness and the adjudication, of course, as we are going to cross the street safely there and plurally, it's best to do that, and that's always best what we have to get doing now, you know, because here we got a corner where sometimes the cars come fast. Even it's not a one-way, eh? So they can come from that side. So if you check assess, you have that risk for them coming from that 1, 2, 3, 4. So from 4, even from that side. So that's why best to wait for the clear, right? That is just my security assessment, and I'm no security expert, but I am an expert in geopolitics because I'm an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, philosopher, thinker, and of course strategist. And I have to say with pride that we're gonna go into geopolitics. Just gotta give a shout out to a fellow Aspie who last September sent $25.44, by which I purchased, of course, bought a bottle of wine, bought of course some cheese, something to eat. So I bought a bottle of wine. I think I bought bacon. I shared with my honest friend a bottle of wine and a bacon, and I think I got some cheese or some wafers also, with like 4 food items for the Sabbath. You know. Thank you to that donation, and I know because we Aspies suffered a lot, and my community is not a big community, and yeah, 0.44%, eh? And we're not. There's not a lot of people don't even know what Asperger's is, and the problem is high unemployment, 80%. So it's 11 times higher for every one of you neurotypicals. Of course, is something which we have to be doing with that, and that's why we did. So of course, that is something which we have to get doing on that, and of course, since it's 11 times higher than the neurotypicals. It's 11 times. So for every one of you who counts to the vast majority unemployed, there's 11 Aspies. Because I am here in my own neighborhood, nothing that I will to go back to. I changed a lot, although change, we have these routines, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of change in terms of friends with benefits, pledge your legions, and of course my dream to get it on the go and get it on the now and get it on the left and in the right and in all those abilities where we have to interact with each other. And the importance to build these bridges. The bridges, of course, are sometimes which we have to be built, and have to be built those bridges together, where we have, of course, the interactions of all the societal appellations, where we got drill it for the go, and some things which we have to understand and to work with, and to get on that work side of things, and to get, of course, the situation now is dire, and it is, of course, the dragon term, of course, the Trump Putin summit, and of course the Putin Trump summit, and of course we're going to see what comes out of that, and then we're going to enter geopolitics, my domain, my field, and of course we gotta have to totally understand, of course, that I have predicted what's happening now back in 2019. So we're going to start with that, and that is super important because, of course, that is my prediction, of course, since I have predicted what's happening now back in 2019. You heard that right. I even put in small videos, the proof. I have proof because I have the documented videos online. Back in 2019, I had predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. So in October 2019, I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. And of course, that international conflagration, of course, has been, is, or will continue to be so, of course, in the matter of the prudence where we have, of course, to get it done. And that is something which we have to appellate continuously in order interdependence of our wellness. General wellness, at least for the North American collective, because even now as Putin meets Trump, it wouldn't surprise me if over the weekend China invades Taiwan. Taiwan is known as the ROC, and of course the IROC in China, the People's Republic of China. Of course, that is something which is a potential explosive situation. So now we're entering geopolitics. Enough with Aspies, celebrating today. Celebrating 8 years since I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event made me come out of being depressed, being depressed and suicidal, and that was, of course, my depression and suicidal, which I got over, and that is something which we have to be appellative and a little bit, of course, on the situational affairs where we are to be on the go now as we are, and always joyous to get a little bit of that rock and roll, and we get a little bit of that knowledge, information, and wisdom, and pertaining, of course, to all the love affairs which we have. And it's always good to see a little bit of kissing and some loving, and it's always good. It gives me some hope because it's not all about the money, and gotta get that appellative, and we have to get fully understood about how we are as a civilizational complex. Civilizational complex which is not totally divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization. So this distinct from Western civilization is something which is distinctive but not divorced. Of course, we have to get totally understood to get, of course, finalized in the formalities of all the appellational situations where we present ourselves as individual sovereign citizens as part of this collective. Quebec, Canada, United States, as we constitute a collective civilizational complex. So it's fully for you to understand that I am a North American. Although, of course, I'm a mystic, I know my reincarnations. I was born here on the island of Montreal, and past lives, previous incarnation. Sometimes a woman, sometimes a man, so that's what it is with that, and that's just what we have to do. And sometimes I was born a woman, Sometimes a woman, a man, you just gotta read that George Patton, through a glass darkly, and through a glass darkly, through a glass darkly. That's what it is with that, and that's how we got, and that's how I gotta get going with that. That's how I gotta operate, it's something which we have to get doing on that, and gotta get on the drill, and we gotta get on those going, and buildings like this. I always love that architecture there. The spiral stairs is something which I like. Spiral, like spirals, the stairs which are like spirals. Kind of love it, although I saw them blurred because I was prescribed some glasses, but nonetheless I kind of find it very cool. And it's always marching, rock and roll, dance, geopolitics, and of course I'm a North American geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, and read one of my favorite poems, Through a Glass Darkly, by George Patton, the general of the Second World War. George Patton wrote about reincarnations, beautiful flower pot there. Wrote about reincarnations. He didn't mention that he was my wife once. I was his wife also. Today I guess I'm the wife and the husband for the empires. God bless, goddess kiss, God bless, goddess kiss. God bless, goddess kiss. It's always God bless, but also goddess, G-O-D-D-S-S, kiss. The coming of our empire, something which that looks really nice. That is really nice done. And of course this face makes me think, of course, because I will to build the 4. I'm going to discuss about 4 buildings now. Which one of it, the 4 buildings, before I wait to cross the street prudently. I will to build a forgotten goddess, G-O-D-D-S-S. You heard that right, because I created my surviving COVID, surviving being depressed, surviving being lonely, survive learning to manage my Asperger's condition, this neurological divergent condition with which I live with. And of course the goddess, G-O-D-D-S-S. Goddess, I will to build the forgotten goddess, G-O-D-D-S-S, goddess temple, and of course the forgotten goddess temple. I credit, of course, to be built with trillions of kisses and trillions of marching steps, and of course that's what it is with that, and trillions of marching steps, trillions of kisses, forgotten goddess temple. On the Canadian-US border, will to build the greatest, bigger ever sports arena complex ever built, the greatest ever sports arena complex ever built, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, which before the Caesar Superdome, it was known as the Mercedes-Benz Dome, and before the Mercedes-Benz Dome, it was known as the Louisiana Superdome. Changed name several times, just like I changed name. And, well, one of my favorite Super Bowls was played, Super Bowl 47, Super Bowl 47. That was one of my favorite Super Bowls. AKA has several nicknames, Super Bowl 47, even though my 49ers lost. That Super Bowl has several nicknames. One of the nicknames is the Hardball Ball, aka Blackout Ball, aka Pro Ball. 49ers lost by 3 points. Beautiful sunset. Looks like a sunrise. The sun is always setting, and of course we're gonna build the North American People's Coliseum, on the Canadian-US border. We're gonna build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum. That's what we gotta get doing on that, and that's why we gotta get drilling on that, and so we gotta get drilling on the rock and roll, man. Yes, that's what we gotta get doing, and that is just what it is with that. And where me and Donald Trump were gonna fight in a boxing match, Gonna fight in the boxing match on the Canadian-US border. We're gonna fight in that boxing match, and that is of course the boxing match of the century. I got carried in my backpack the red gloves, which were gifted from a friend, and who wasn't my friend because of the money, because I never had any, and I got those gloves, and that is something which we have to do with the gloves, and that is where we have to stand, and we have to of course implement, and we have to get of course the doings of all our plurality, where we have to fight me and Donald Trump. Gonna fight. I've been challenging Donald Trump to fight me in a boxing match ever since 2018, when Donald Trump first imposed tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel. Those tariffs were first imposed in 2018, and since then I have been advocating for the building construction of the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, and of course the Forgotten Goddess Temple. The Forgotten Goddess Temple to be and to do, and to get it on the go, to get it on the left, right, and Z, and that's how we gotta get drilling with that, and we gotta get drilling on the left and the right, and in the Z, and in the middle, and in the confluence, of course, of building the Forgotten Goddess Temple. Let it be built 11 times bigger than this majestic building here, which is known, of course, as the Oratory. The Forgotten Goddess Temple to be 11 times bigger than the Oratory, and the sports arena complex, the North American Imperial People's Coliseum. The Imperial People's Coliseum, of course, to be 11 times bigger than the Louisiana Superdome. Caesar Superdome. Now it changed names, just like I changed names, and we also had a name before. It was Mercedes-Benz Dome. So let's build 11 times 11. The Forgotten Goddess GODDSS times 11. So that sports arena, Imperial Coliseum, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, and me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate it in a sports arena complex. We're going to inaugurate it in the sports arena complex, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to inaugurate it in the sports arena complex, and that's what we're going to get doing with that, and that's what we're going to get drilling. And of course, to be built so high and so majestic, that is going to be 11 times bigger than the Harbor Ball, and that's what we got to get doing with that, and so we got to get drilling, So that is just something which we have, of course, to appellate, of course, in our integral abilities and all integral matters where we are now. Going to be passing to check a little bit of that beauty there, and that is just what we're going to have to be doing. Look at that beautiful garden here. So this build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, Forgotten Goddess Temple, Forgotten Goddess Temple, and that's just what we're going to do there. Look at that. Beautiful. So we're going to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, and that's what we got. And yeah, and the Caesar Superdome, me and Donald Trump are going to inaugurate. We're going to have sports in perpetuities. I just want to pass a little bit for these flowers here. When you get those yellow flowers, you get me, eh? I love yellow flowers, and quadruples my smile there. Quadruples my smile, and yeah, we're gonna have to build more gardens like this one. Just gonna smell a bit. Oh, this one has a little bit of scent, a little bit of the mint. It smells a bit like mint and rice, but this is a beautiful garden here. I really love the embellishment on how they built it, and really good job on that. And yesterday we went by that side, but now we're gonna get on the side circumvention on the other side there, and that is something which we're gonna be doing on that. Of course, the oratory, gonna build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, and the biggest ever sports arena where me and Donald Trump are gonna fight inaugurated. And of course, on the Canadian-US border, we're gonna build that Imperial People's Coliseum, symbolizing our fusion. And we're gonna build my pyramid, the scarlet crimson, and scarlet are basically shades of red, basically shades of red, and that is what it is with that. And we're gonna build those shades of red, and that's what we're gonna be doing, building together, the North American people's. It's not gonna be North America; it's gonna be the Imperial Coliseum. So of course, that's what we're gonna be doing together. And I gotta get out of the way here because the car might pass on the go, and I'm gonna get swift a bit. So I'm just gonna get out of the way. So now, as we go, we're gonna go, of course, to the change lanes here. Turn your heads left or right when you cross the street, because sometimes they can come like that fellow came there, but something which of course we have to be prudent, because that car could have easily struck somebody if you're not careful here. As you see, there's a congestion, so it's always something which you have to do my way and your way and our way in order to get the safest possible interactions, because now I got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations When I'm in the public, I have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations that I don't have under the normal circumstances of life. If I would have stayed home, I would have not had the same circumstances, the same obligations, right? Because in the public, we have not only rights, but we also have obligations and duties. You know, we got to get a mass public health emergency protocols for the rehabilitation of the Imperial public health orders, Imperial public health orders, Imperial public health orders, and that's what we do with the Imperial public health orders, and that's how we drill, and that's how we gotta get drilling with that, of course, 24/7 for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, plumbers, electricians, and the bakers, the nurses, and the doctors, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food. And that is something which we have to be doing, you know, something which, of course, we have to augment always in the parlance of all our communications and all our doings, of course, where we have to just build those bridges and respect the individual sovereign citizen, myself, you, and us together, the individual and the collective. So geopolitics now, one-on-one, of course, the Putin and Trump meeting in Alaska. Beautiful flowers there. So the Putin and Trump meeting in Alaska, of course, the Putin and Trump meeting in Alaska is surprising, and the question is, how come Zelensky wasn't present? It begs the question, the presence of Zelensky, president of Ukraine. Now, of course, as much as I know the ideologies and, of course, the philosophies, I remain a North American, you know? I remain a North American. And, of course, that is, of course, the situation with myself, that I remain a North American in the congruency, of course, that being a North American for the situation where we do and where we go, of course, to build these bridges together in all the apartments where we are. And, of course, the conclusion, of course, you have to go back again. We have to go back in time together again. We have to go back, of course, in time to 2019, October, November, whence I had predicted that there was going to be an international conflagration, that there was going to be an international conflagration, that there was going to be an international conflagration. And that's what I predicted back in 2019, in October, November. I had predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. And of course, that was the prediction when I predicted it, that there's going to be on the horizon an international conflagration. Just love that red with the white. It kind of goes a little bit of good combo there. So leave the baggage at the door. We're entering my domain, my realm, geopolitics, and that is quite cool. Now, Aspies, you know, we would obsess about those numbers. You see, there's a 40, a line, and 04. A 40, a line, and 04. See, 40, a line, and 04. 40. There's a 40 and a line and a 04. 40, a line, and 04. So, of course, all the domain, of course, the interjections and all the appellations, of course, where we are, and we concomitantly, of course, be to, of course, appellate the civilization of complex of our daily routines as aspects, that we might, of course, focus on those special little details that was written, of course, on that, the special details which were written on that garbage bag. It's not really a garbage bag per se, it's a big garbage container, and I actually wonder, where was it built? Was it made in Canada or the United States? Anyways, so back in 2019 in October, and I have proof for this, I had predicted, of course, there was going to be an international conflagration. I predicted that there was going to be an international conflagration. I predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration. And so I created, made, and produced and designed a workout training program system designed, created to go hand in hand with that situational complex of which we have, of course, to implement and implement, of course, as individuals and part of the collective. So I also created a workout training program system, and I have, of course, myself performed more than 372 sessions. More than 370, more than 372 sessions. 372 sessions. 372 sessions. More than 372 sessions. I've created that workout training program system designed to go hand in hand with a World War III scenario back, of course, in 2019. And of course, I had created that workout training program system to go more, of course, when we are to get that burst. And that is just something when we have to appellate and integrate. And I always meditate when these were built here, when were these built here? Beautiful, beautiful, majestic buildings. That is what it is. And construction workers, I need you to help build, of course, the structures with me, and that is yours truly what I need to be helped with to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, which could be made out of concrete, steel like this, aluminum and steel and concrete, and the Imperial People's Colosseum to be made from concrete, just as this big building. I gotta salute the construction workers rock and roll when I see on those cranes and in those lanes. That is just something which I have to be doing with that, and that is just the characteristics, of course, of where we have it today as we appellate our conclusive integrational aspects. And the domain now, of course, is geopolitics. And of course, I had predicted what's happening now back in 2019, in October, November 2019. I have proof, I have the video online. I had predicted what's happening now back in 2019. You heard that right, you heard that correct. I had predicted what's happening now back in 2019, in October, November. In October, November, I predicted what's happening now. October, November 2019. 2019. I even made in the past, this week, last week, and 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to keep on making every week, every other day, because it's important. Small clips showing those little videos where you see my workout, Dragon workout, aka General Integrated Whole Body Training System, which requires no equipment, and which myself have performed more than 372. And when I reached 300, I said, of course, officially that my name became Dragon. Nobody's born a dragon. Don't leave that trash there. My kids might pick it up, and if you leave something like that, just put it in the recycling. Put it somewhere. You gotta put the recycling with the recycling though, and the garbage with the garbage. The bag has to be recycled, absolutely. The contents maybe not, but don't just a public place. Don't leave it there, unless you left some food, I guess, for somebody, and maybe that's some food. Maybe I should have checked. I got halva in the back. I got some food, but food security is important. Food prices are increasing, and no food waste. Sometimes we take for granted until we learn the lessons the hard way, Until we learn the lessons the hard way, then we appreciate, then we appreciate more of the things that, the things that we used to have, which are in terms of the prices. If you look at the prices now, of course, rents and skyrocket rents and cost of living, the majority of the people are stressed economically, financially, commercially. Canada, United States, problematic. So back to 2019, I predicted what's happening now, I predicted what's happening now. So having that I predicted what's happening now, of course, I have some solutions. So that is the prediction. The prediction, of course, was that there's going to be an international conflagration, aka World War III. So that was, of course, in 2019. In 2019, October, November 2019. 16, let's cross. 14, we're gonna cross the other side. 14, 12, 11. That's what it is, and that's what it is for the ghosts. Every second we gotta have, and that's what it is with that, and that's what it is now. So we're gonna cross. So of course the formulations here, the appellations where we are integrally and of course visibly to get on the left and on the right, and that's what we have to do here, So basically we have, of course, to formulate, and we have to find solutions. So I predicted back in 2019 in October, November that there's going to be an international conflagration. In other words, a World War III. That was exactly my scenario. It started in October 2019. And for the most part, what has been happening now, has been following a pattern which strongly resembles my World War III scenario of 2019. My World War III scenario of 2019. So that was, of course, the World War III scenario back from 2019. So the premise was that due, of course, to many unresolved conflicts, that these conflicts were not fully resolved, and due, of course, to these conflicts not being fully resolved, these conflicts are going to restart. Right? And if you look at Ukraine, Russia, what's happening now is that these conflicts have restarted. These are unresolved conflicts from the 20th century. From the 20th century. These are unresolved conflicts from the 20th century, right? Russia, Ukraine. It's from the Cold War period, which lasted almost 45 years between 1947, March 1947, and December 1991, right? The Cold War period lasted a long time. Lasted a very long time. Some say even 46 years. I say between 1947, March 1947, and end of December 1991. Here we can cross because there's no cars at this time. The gates are closed, so you don't have to worry about cars coming in there. Although we have to pass. So that was my prediction, you know. That was my prediction. That was my prediction. But it was not a prophecy, right? It was based on the fact that that's my special interest, and I am an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst, theorist, thinker, and strategist, of course. So that was the prediction. 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 So that was the prediction. And that is happening now, is unfolding now, you know. It's unfolding now as I predicted it in a general manner. But as much as I know the conflicts in this life, because in other lives I was born all across the world, since ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, as a priestess at Delphi, I orated to Lycurgus, the great Erythrea. In a past life I was the Pythia, who orated the great Erythrea. To Lycurgus, I was Pythia, the priestess who orated the great to Lycurgus. I was Pythia, the great priestess who orated the great Erythrea to Lycurgus in a past life. But here we are, 15th of August 2025, 5 years later. It's going to be in October, it's going to be 6, right? 2019, since I predicted that there's going to be, and it's happening now. And I changed my name officially, still got to pay to change it officially, because of course when I performed 300, my own creative workout training program system, officially titled the General War Integrate All Body Training System, that is of course when I had predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, and so made, created, and produced the workout training program system. Just gonna get my glasses because they fell. Gonna get it for the go. That's what it is, and that's what it is. So back, of course, in 2019, that is what I predicted. That is what I predicted. That is what I predicted. That was my prediction of 2019. 2019, that was my prediction. 2019, that was my prediction. That was my prediction. 2019. That was, of course, my prediction. That was my prediction. So I predicted, of course, that there's going to be an international. So I predicted that it's going to happen such a manner. So of course that was my prediction, and of course that was what, of course, I had predicted, that there's going to be an international conflagration. Rather, it's going to be an international conflagration. And so for the most part, that is what's happening now. That is what's happening. So taking great pride in my geopolitical work. And the fact that I have proof again. I have proof, I have the videos, you can see them, I show them, and that's basically the proof that, of course, I had predicted an international conflagration back in 2019. In October, November, back in 2019, I had predicted an international conflagration. And so made, created, and produced the workout training program system, which of course was created and has made it, and of course had made it to go hand in hand with the World War III scenario. And of course that is the World War III scenario, which of course I had created it myself to go and be fully implemented, my protocols, theories, and propositions as I go up the mountain on my second home. So I'm going to discuss the General Integrated Total Body Training System now a bit. The General Integrated Total Body Training System is an efficient, effective workout training program system, which I myself performed more than 372 sessions, which I created back in 2019 to go on such an event as a workout, as a World War III scenario. As a World War III scenario. As of course it is unfolding now across the North American Collective, as it is unfolding now across the North American Collective. And of course it is unfolding in many ways generally as I had predicted it. So my workout has rules. It requires no equipment. It requires no equipment. These are the rules. One is allocated 93 minutes to do, actually it's 93 minutes 44 seconds. Gotta salute, this is the Canadian Armed Forces. Needs some paint on it. Canadian Armed Forces got a raise. Good for you. My Dragonomic Total SSD Legion Protocols best for the North American integration, blah blah blah. And my total mobile defense theory, which I started developing post 2017, blah blah, best. I cannot discuss it over much on YouTube, as you know from my past videos that it's binational, even to extend it to the NATO security plateau, the NATO security complex, of course, which has to be developed for the strategy that is at hand. So, the General Integrated Total Body Training System, aka the Dragonomic workout. One is allocated 93 minutes, so you could try to do it 93 minutes 44 seconds and 9/11ths of a second, so almost 45 seconds. 93 minutes 44 seconds and 9/11ths of a second is of course the official number. The official number of course is 93 minutes, that's an hour and a half, 44 seconds and 9/11ths of a second. So that is of course the official number. The time allocated, once you start the countdown, there's no pause, no stop. You gotta march, jog or run for the continuing while you do 100 push-ups, 100 squats and 100 hawks. So that is the trinity of exercises, 100 of each. You got 3 exercises to do, 100 of each, which you have to do 100 push-ups, 100 hawks, 100 squats, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 hawks. Once again, 100 push-ups, 100 squats, 100 hawks. 300, 100 for each. Once you start the countdown, the tick-tock, the 9 you put the clock, 93 minutes is allocated total to do 100, officially 93 minutes, 44 seconds and 9/11ths of a second. It's a precise time frame. It's a precise exercise which doesn't necessarily build aesthetics, but it increases general overall fitness. It's actually meant to increase general overall fitness. It's actually meant to increase general overall fitness. It's actually meant to increase, and it does, general overall fitness. So again, 93 minutes, 44 seconds, and of course 9/11ths of a second. That is the time allocated. You have to do 100 push-ups, 100 hawks, 100 squats. That's the trinity. But you cannot, once you start the countdown, you cannot pause. So you have to keep it in motion by marching, jogging, running, or walking. Either of those four, but you cannot stop. So you can't stop more than 4 seconds. Right? You cannot pause and say, oh, I did, you know. And the maximum allowed of push-ups or hawks or squats is 13 or minimum 3. So between 13 and 3, but until you get to 100. So you got to do 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and hawks. You can check out my workout. I performed online on YouTube and on Facebook. More than hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of my own created workout training program system, which I have created back in 2019 in October, November. So that was the creation, and of course that was the appellation of course, the fundamental aspects, of course, all the domains in the integral part, of course, of all the characteristics where we are, of course, where we are to do, and inside the characteristics where we are, of course, to integrate and to appellate in such a manner where we are conclusive, of course, to all the domain where we have the plurality of exercising. And it's super important. I advocate for it to be, of course, consequently integrated in the NATO complex across NATO armies, police forces as well, FBI, CMP, and of course all the security forces, and even in high schools, to of course to try and do my workout training program system, which is an efficient, effective, not that simple, I guess, but it can be simple, more simple for others than for some. So that is the workout. That is the workout. And now we proceed from the workout to, of course, having it created to go with the World War III scenario, which I predicted back, of course, in 2019. So that is important, of course, to note. Not only to note, but to know, because it was created to go with such a scenario as, of course, a World War III scenario, of course, in the appellative manner, of course, where we are to be subjected to all the characteristics where we are internally and, of course, visibly in the exterior, that we are on the verge of a World War III. And we might even witness an economic financial crash. Monday could be Black Monday, August, month of Leo still, for another week. But of course it is within the realm of possibilities. So of course within the realm of these possibilities, those are the possibilities which could of course manifest internally. Of course the manifestation of them is something which of course has to be conducive to us getting fit and getting healthy. And I have been and will continue to mass advocate for the mass financing of citizens, of course, to work out, to train, to exercise, to work out, to train and to exercise, to work out, to train and to exercise, to work out, to train and to exercise. And that's what it is with that, to work out, to train and to exercise, So that is something which we have, of course, to appellate, and we have to, of course, integrate in all our manners and characteristics where we are here, passing, of course, by this beautiful park, of course, here where we are, and here where we enjoy, of course, ourselves to be, where we are, of course, the pure side of XYZ, and here we get a little bit of that dimension where we are to get on the left side of things, and on the right, just like driving, and I mean the others on the left and us on the right here is just interjection, of course, that we have, of course, to get on the left and get on the right, and of course in the integral part where we are, of course, to get the domain that I wish to paint all these bridges here, and of course build bridges, that is, and build, of course, get some, of course, some bridges built, and build, of course, rebuild, of course, the paint, that is, paint, to paint a little bit of that painting of these benches, they need to be painted a lot, and that's what they need to be doing, and that is something which we have to appellate in the painting of the, super important to paint, of course, the building, and that's what they are, they're worn out, worn them out, man. That is, of course, the appellation, of course, of where we are, the transnational, of course, event of things, and that's what we have to be doing, and we gotta get doing on that. We're worn you out. Tired, eh? Tired. People are tired, worn out, eh? Worn out. the fuck? Oh, jeez. Oh, plan de gros. Allez, allez. Ouf, ouf. Oh, shit. Force. Forced laughter, my friends. There's it, force. Don't need to force yourself. Force. You force. Anyways, so that's what it is, and I just thought of which book. I was listening to some audiobooks, Tom Clancy's audiobooks. At one point, there's something about forced laughter, how the operative is, not me, as I'm a nobody, but I wouldn't be able to. I know my geopolitics, but it's detecting how, some operatives can detect, for example, when forced laughter, forced laughter, that is something which we have to be doing, Yeah, so basically, of course, in 2019, of course, is something which we have, of course, to operate, and we have, of course, to get on the diplomacy with, and of course, we have to conjugate, of course, and we have to be implementing, of course, all the characteristics where we have to be doing on our well-being now, it's something which we have to do. So basically, I predicted what's happening now back in 2019, and that's what I predicted in October, November, that there's going to be an international conflagration, That's what I predicted, and that's what's happening. And even I'm concerned that there might be an invasion by China and Taiwan. They might invade, man. And of course, I had predicted what's happening now in a general manner. My premise was a bit academic, intellectual, sophisticated, a bit more scholarly in the discourse, but to generalize, and of course the sum and bonum was that, of course, I predicted, of course, that due to several levels of analysis, of which one was the fact that there were unresolved conflicts from the Second World War, which were not fully resolved, that I had predicted that these conflicts were going to recommence, and for the most part, that is exactly what's happening now. These conflicts from the 20th century have resurfaced. I always bring it back to the North American Collective, of which myself, I am a North American, fundamentally Canadian Quebecer, born in the United States 3 times post 1776, once as a woman, twice as a man. Was, of course, appellating, of course, and of course saying that, of course, the dynamics of all the societal well-being, and all, of course, those who have to be in the conclusive of all the chances where we are now to live and to do, and of course to be, and of course to get it on the go for that, and get it to find some solutions. Because here we made what I call the Great North American Linguistic Compromise for the French language. Take Quebec, right? And now we have problems, and we haven't had these problems for a long time. And now what I'm going to say, one has to accord with a yes, 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 yes. You cannot negotiate, you can only affirm it in the positive, you can't even say no, and you cannot even say maybe. This following statement is a geopolitical statement, is a statement which is relative for Canada and United States, for both Canada vis-a-vis the United States. Nice flower pots, thank you, public workers. Y'all rock the brains of muscle, public workers, brains of muscle. They get a rock and roll. So of course you cannot say no, you cannot say maybe. You have of course to accord it in the positive. In the positive, of course, the positive has to be accorded. So one, you cannot say no. Here's that stars, filming some films and get a little bit of the star and get a little bit of that rock and roll with a star and get a little bit of dancing with it. Priestess, you know, I'm a priestess, not a hoe. Dragon, general dragon, got a priestess. Where a goddess, Judy, says, you know, dance Thelemites, blah, blah, blah. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. Fans will benefits only or open for business. Let's get the DGA, Dancing Goddess Army, and the Dragon Army, you know. That's all we need to get, and that's all we need to do. And, you know, of course, to salute and to get a little bit of that S and S and S. And where we are, of course, interplural, the dimension of oral. Looks like something's being filmed, or some stars, or some events. But this is the mountain, my second home, Mount Royal, and I love to come here, love to come dance. Dancing is my favorite sport. When I dance, I am that woman priestess of Thelemik, non-sectarian. That's what we have to do there. That's what we have, of course, to appellate and conjugate, of course, in our peculiar manner where we are, of course, to get something done. And we have, of course, to get on the appellation side, of course, of being in the transversal of the mountain, because we're gonna go, of course, by the interior instead of going by where the majority of the population goes. I mean, we're Aspies nonetheless, so might as well we go by the second part where we have to do and that we have to go on the go. So that is something what we have to do, and that is something what we got to get on that rolling, you know. So that is something what we got to do, you know. That's how we gotta get doing like that, and that's how we gotta get on that drill, you know, to get on the love side of things. And here we got on the inter problem where we are, of course, to get on the do, and that's what it is with that. And that's how we gotta get that appellation to get on the left and on the right and in the XYZ, you know, to get on the XYZ. And here we enter, you know. That's where we are, and here we are. Gonna go up, and of course that is, of course, the proposition where we are, of course, to get it rolling for XYZ reasons. And the motive, the proposition, the geopolitical statement is that we, gonna let my main out, we Quebecers, Canadians, our main geopolitical interest is, of course, to have, of course, the information, and of course to have the sentence, of course, that it is with that, to get it, of course, on the go with that, to get it on the left and on the right, of course, in the transmissive side of things where we are, to get it on that rock and roll. That is our most important, of course, decision. Our most, of course, important, of course, appellation is that we must have, of course, the best, most cordial economic, social, cultural relations with the United States. That is, of course, just our main. There's no add to that, and this is reciprocal for the United States. So once again, the statement is, and this statement has to be affirmed in the positive. You cannot say no to it. Our main interest for us when it comes to external affairs for Canada, United States, and for the United States vis-a-vis us, of course, it is, of course, the corrective side of things where we have, of course, to get on the side of things where we are to appellate. So, of course, the statement is our main objective when it comes to foreign affairs, foreign affairs, not domestic internal affairs, right? Foreign affairs, and this is reciprocal for both Canada and the United States, that we must have, of course, the best, most cordial relation with the United States. There's, of course, no way out of that. You have to accord it in the positive. So, of course, having that, you have to accord that in the positive, then we can move forward, because otherwise we'll be at an impasse. So for us Canadians, our main important aspect of our foreign policy is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. And the United States vis-a-vis us, it is the same principle which applies. The same principle applies, right? So that is a constant, just like the pi symbol is, of course, that constant. That's all we have to do. That is, of course, the principle which we have to operate. That is the principle which we have to operate. And of course, by that principle, we operate in the and then we can move forward. Because if you say no, we're not in real geopolitics. So our, of course, main philosophical reason, point to be, is that we must have the best, most cordial economic, financial, commercial relations with the United States. Look at that beautiful sunset. Wow. Look at that. Isn't that nice? You can see it there. That is just the principle. So that is just the principle. That is not a constant. So you cannot argue with that. You cannot argue with that. You cannot argue with that. You can always only affirm it in the positive. In the positive. In the positive. So that is always yes. That has been so for the past years and decades, 75 years. It is so today. 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 So of course, that is the most important part for you to go and get that drill with. And for you to say accord it, of course, that is what it is. Of course. That is what it is, you know. That is just how it is. Internally, it's not the same because it's domestic. But when it comes to foreign affairs, that is our main interest, to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with the United States. That is just like the pi symbol, which represents, of course, the proportion, the ratio for a circumference. It's always the same. It does not move. It's 3.1416. So that statement which I just made, you have to affirm in the, and with one voice, yes, yes, yes. From the right, whether you're on the right, on the left, in the center, you cannot negotiate with that. Of course, now I'm discussing far left or far right. Left, right, and center, or center, right, center, left. Our main interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial relations with the United States. Right? With the United States. That's just what it is fundamentally. Fundamentally, that is just what it is. That is just what it is. So that is just fundamentally the essence of the whole foreign policies, as we have to, of course, quantify it, of course, in a principium, in a principle. Of course, the principle has to be always, and always is, that we must seek to have the best, most cordial, economic, best, mutually beneficial economic, social, financial, social, cultural, diplomatic, military, defense relations with the United States, and the United States vis-a-vis us also must work towards that principle as the primary, or as a hierarchy of importance. When we are to classify in a importance, hierarchical importance as on the number one spot for Canada vis-a-vis all the countries of the world, is to have placed the United States first in terms of with who do we have to build the best economic, social, dynamic, functional, commercial relations with. And for the United States with us, although they also have a border with Mexico, it is also vis-a-vis Canada. It is not just historical, and this has been so at least since the dissolution of the British Empire, right? The dissolution of the British Empire, slow dissolution of the British Empire. So this has been a gradual, well, it's been so at least since the 1950s and the end of the Second World War, so for more than 75 years. It is so today, and it will be so continuously in the future. Right, but that you have to say yes. You cannot negotiate. You can't say no. You have to say yes. And you cannot say maybe. And that is why I bring in the symbol, the pie symbol. Not the pie as in an edible bacon pie, cheese pie, apple pie, strawberry pie, all sorts of edible pies. But the pie is in the N, letter N. And from normal, neurodivergent, natural, or of course Normandy, whatever the case may be. And that is of course something which you have to of course protrude and of course be fundamentally in all the propositions where we are, of course, where we interact. Of course that is the symbol which represents the relation, the proportion, the relation, a relationship with the N, of course. And that is the N, of course, which represents the symbol, the circumference and the ratio, the symbol between the circumference and the ratio. And that is the symbol. N. It has like two heads, two heads, because the N is like split with two, kind of like two twins conjoined, but like two-headed, two-faced. So thus our coming empire, by fusing Canada and the United States, will be kind of two-headed, two-faced in many ways. One to be benevolent and one, of course, to punish. One, of course, to be benevolent, one to punish. And that is, of course, something which, of course, is interjected in all the domains where we have, of course, the naturalness ability of all our dictums, of course, to be concomitant and conclusive to all the appellations where we are in the domain, of course, where we are, of course, where we conclude, of course, to be in all our fullness of all our apparatus and all the well-being of the domain, of course, where we are, to interject and, of course, to appellate that is so. That is so. So our fusion, the Imperial fusion, of course, for the North America Collective, which, of course, is going to have, of course, the coming of our future empire, because we have to implement my DRT, which is part of the bipolar strategy for the total dominance, BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world, by fusing Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican complex, which we need to sign the Imperial Republic Union. That is something which we have to interject and we have to do. And of course we have to do, of course, all our part. And of course it is the interjectional part of the ability where we are, of course, inconclusive, of course, today. And we have, of course, to appellate all the conclusivenesses which we have today, on the point being that we are now on this mountain, my second home mountain in Mount Royal. That's all we have to do. So considering all that is so, that is so. So that is just a fact, a geopolitical fact. That is a reality. So that is, of course, something which have to accord in the plural, in the affirmative and positive. You cannot negotiate, right? It's not negotiable. That is why it is like the pi symbol. It's a symbol which is always the same. It's a constant. It's a mathematical constant, not a variable, which always represents that number. Is symbolized by the symbol P, pi, which is, of course, like that double-headed, two-faced N. And it's always 3.1416, which always represents the circle and the diameter, of course, and the circle, the diameter, of course, the circumference. So that is, for us, of course, the geopolitical context is that. So I'm going to hydrate here, leave a little bit of the water to gonna leave a little bit of the water, of course, to go, and of course to transverse and to get it on the go for that. And of course we're gonna get characterizations, of course, of all the domain where we have the domain in the pool, of course, of all our ability to get it on the go, and of course to appellate the circumvision, of course, that we're gonna clear the pipes before, of course, we go get the drink. And thank you workers who built this fountain here for all atop the mountain with that brains and muscle engineering, of course, to build the building right here. It is something, of course, which I have to appreciate in conclusion, because it's part of my fitness here, and it's part for us that I'm going to be able to discuss fully and with vigor, added vigor and health, the DRT, the debt rule fusion theory for the North American collective perspective, as we're going to have to do it together. So let's rock and roll, hydrate, and I'm going to discuss the DRT. And of course, we finalize the motive, of course, by we have it with that the motive, the reason why we have to have the best relations with each other, Canada vis-a-vis the United States and the United States vis-a-vis us, is the primary importance, number one, when it comes to foreign affairs. Is, of course, that we share that coast to coast, ocean to ocean, the geographical realities of two oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific, vis-a-vis, of course, that we're a new civilizational complex, so our past history and our common destiny. That's what it is. That's what we got, and that's what we gotta get that rock and roll. Yeah, and that's what we gotta get doing with the drill, and that's what we gotta get doing on that, you know. So it's something which we have to do, and we have to get doing on that XYZ, and that's what we have to get doing, you know, for the left and for the right and for the left. So the DRT now, the debt rule fusion theory, of course, the debt rule fusion theory is something which we have to get uploaded, you know. So something which we have to get fully understand. Yeah. So that's what we have to fully understand. So the DRT now, the debt rule fusion theory, is super important that I discuss it fully. The debt rule fusion theory is something which, of course, has to be concorded and accorded, and we have to implement it, because again, there's no way out of the situation, because we have four main problems which affect us. Those four main problems, of course, affect us in a way, of course, which we are now, both Canada and United States. It's applicable both for Canada and United States. There's four main problems which are affecting us at different levels, at different individuals, but the vast majority of the population are affected by the four in whatever order we place them. So the growing cost of rents. So that's why I say that the DRT, my debt rule fusion theory, has to be, of course, implemented. My DRT has, of course, to be implemented. My DRT, the debt rule fusion theory, has to be, of course, implemented. You know, has to be, of course, implemented. The DRT has, of course, to be implemented. The DRT, debt rule fusion theory. So we're gonna take all the public and the private debt, because of the four main problems. One of the problems is, of course, the growing cost of rents. Even my rent increased, so I'm not going to say how much it was. I'm going to say that it was between 6 and 10. So in my case, I'm going to say that it is justifiable, but it's not gonna be enough for me to complain. So I can't really complain, because of course it is within the norms, between 6 and 10, between 6 and 10. So of course, being that it is between 6 and 10, that is of course concomitantly, which we're gonna be of course prudent on the go to get of course the relation of course where we are of course now. Because if it's 6 or 10, for me, that is, I'm not going to say exactly how much my rent went up, but I'm going to say that it is between 6 and 10. But for me, it was okay. I can't complain. Like I said, I can't really complain for me. But the rents are increasing. The cost of living is increasing, right? So rents and cost of living, growing cost of the bread, the cheese, the bacon, the milk, cost of most of the things, including the eggs, the bacon, the cheese, the bread, the romaine lettuce, are increasing. The rents are increasing. The stagnation of the salaries. The salaries are stagnating. The stagnation of the salaries. The other problem with the stagnation of the salaries is even now somebody's swiping that credit card. Somebody's swiping that credit card. Somebody from Montreal to San Francisco is swiping, buying, getting more in debt. And we have reached, for both Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the USA, we have reached record-breaking debt. Record-breaking debt. The debts, we are in record-breaking debt. Record-breaking debt. Record-breaking debt. So we have record-breaking debts. Well, of course, we have record-breaking debt. That is just what it is. We have record-breaking debts, you know? Record-breaking debt. So that is just what we have. Record-breaking debt. That is just what it is, and that is what we have to get doing with that, and we have to get drilling on the go, you know. Just record-breaking debt, you know. Record-breaking debt. That is just what we have. Record-breaking debt now, you know. Just that we have record-breaking debts, you know. So those four, in whatever order, for whatever individuals, that is just, of course, what we have, of course, to get, of course, drilling. And those four problems are fundamental and they're grave, because, of course, a problem can be, of course, in the coming situational aspects where we have, of course, for the domain, of course, where we are the appellative of word, the domains where we got the pro living, of course, in the enjoyment. And then, of course, these four problems cannot be solved by any other solution but my DRT, the debt fusion theory, as we are, of course, in the fundamental aspects of the life, or something very similar, which accords, which is in principle my DRT theory, the debt fusion theory, for the fundamental aspect where we live today. So that is just fundamentally what it is. And here we're going to stretch a bit and check a little bit of that city. See, that's my favorite skyscraper there, that pyramid. That is just my favorite skyscraper. That is my favorite skyscraper there. See how nice it is? Look at that. Super nice, eh? That is just my favorite skyscraper. I love that skyscraper. That's the pyramid, and it's surrounded by a river, eh? See, the whole island is surrounded by a big river. And you can see the bridge. I guess it's got a little bit of that. The bridge is actually, you can see now, the bridge is actually multicolor. It changes colors. So you can see there, I believe that's Champlain Bridge, and of course the Champlain Bridge is changing colors now. You can see it on and off, how of course it changes a little bit of those colors there, and we gotta get on those drills. So see that skyscraper? That is just so nice. It has the pyramid shape, and sometimes it's colorful. Sometimes it's red, sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's purple, even of course the rainbow color sometimes for Pride, for June, it is of course symbolizing. And that is just a magnificent building. And here you're in Hakata, Montreal. So we're gonna go back into the forest. I'm not gonna stay long here. I'm just gonna stay a little bit, and I'm gonna be watching for the branches, because got those branches. So here we are from the top here. We're gonna go back inside, and there we go. Get back in and back in the drill. Beautiful skyscrapers, that's all we got, and that it is what it is for that. And got some love there, that's good. Always good for me to see, of course, some loving and somebody holding that, those hands with the a bit of kissing, real loving. So now we're going to discuss, of course, the DRT, the debt refusion theory, of course, for the creation of the UE, the Euro Universal Exchange Unit, of the Universal Exchange Unit. So of course the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit, is of course something which we have, of course, in the Concordium to, of course, get, of course, the Universal Exchange Unit, the Universal Exchange Unit, and that's of course something which we have, of course, to appellate and of course to integrate fully in all the domains, of course, domain where we are, of course, in the side of the things where those four problems affect us in a grave manner, of course, in a grave manner, more or less different individuals, but nonetheless, in the majority, we are affected by those four problems. Just like I said, growing cost of living, growing cost of rent, stagnation of the size, and the growing credit card debt. Every week, every other week, every month, I see that there's record credit card debt and the debt is increasing. So here's the DRT explained. Debt refusion theory integrates, in my theories, integrated the monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory, which was implemented in the European Union, which was implemented in the European Union, which was implemented in the European Union, which was implemented in the European, which was implemented in the European Union, right? The European Union. Was implemented in the European Union. So the monetary integration theory is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union back in the 90s. So that is, of course, something which you're going to have to apply. So back in the 90s, of course, that was, of course, the implementation of that theory, which of course made the creation of the European Central Bank, and of course the ECB, the European Central Bank. The Germans, of course, they destroyed their national central bank. The French, they destroyed their national central bank. The French, also the Belgium and other countries, they destroyed, their national central banks, and they created a central bank, which of course is accorded now, of course, to have the plurality, of course, of the individual side of things, where we are appellated in all the domains where we are, of course, to be in the circumstantial prudence of the things where we are, to get, of course, the domain in the left and right and in the circle, and of course to implement, of course, all the life forces where we are now, and and we have to implement it binationally once again. Canada and United States, it has to be implemented, both Canada and United States, so we have to get on it. So I'm going to explain it now. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, we're going to take it together, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all the public and the private debt. We're going to convert it into US dollars. So we're going to create and convert it into US dollars, and we're going to add it with the United States public-private debt, and of course we're going to create this new currency, right? So all the Canadian public-private debt added with the US dollars, we're going to add it with the United States debt, public and private debt. All that debt is going to, of course, be the creation of a new debt. All the public-private debt of Canada converted into US dollars, added with the public-private debt of the United States, that is going to be all the money for a new central bank, right? It's going to be for a new central bank. So all this new central bank, of course, what we're going to have is, of course, going to be this creation of this new central bank, and we're going to issue what we're going to call the UE, which is going to have the value of the US dollar. So all the public-private debt of Canada converted into US dollars, added with the US, we're going to create a new currency and a new central bank for Canada and United States. It could be expanded to other countries, but first and foremost, of course, with the United States. Or whatever we call the currency, we're going to call the currency that is the UE, U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. The universal exchange will have the value of the US dollar. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%. We're not going to be able to have more than 10%. It's going to be 10 maximum. It could be lower. It could be lower than 10. 3.33, 1.56, and so on and so forth. Below, but not more. And that is going to be the UE, Universal Exchange Unit. That Universal Exchange Unit is going to make us this new currency. We're going to rebuild the infrastructure of the North American Collective, rebuild the bridges, build those 44 mass city tunnel complexes in case of a thermonuclear war. In case of a thermonuclear war, we're going to build those massive structures, complexes underground, underneath. In case of a thermonuclear war, we're going to finance citizens' fitness. We're going to get rid of the border, do a great economic, financial, fiscal inventory of Canada and United States. We're going to give some amnesty to see everybody who's been living here in Canada and United States across the 10 provinces, 50 states, 3 territories. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to create a common passport. We're going to do a census. It will require a mass public-private partnership. It will require a mass public-private partnership, right? It will require a supermass public-private partnership, and of course it will require a public-private partnership, a centrist. It's a pro-liberal, love universal revolutionary centrist. For the North American Imperial complex to fuse Canada and United States in this Imperial Republic. Once we're going to mass finance fitness, we're going to mass finance fitness, we're going to mass finance citizens intra-North American tourism, and of course allocate credits for tourism, build those 4 and the 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war, underground mass tunnel structure systems. Pledge your allegiance to our family, and we're going to of course get the we're going to put the Hawk in the Golden Dome to have capabilities to intercept interballistic continental missiles. We're going to create this new central bank, the UE. We're going to constitute the fusion, Imperial fusion, perpetual Imperial Republican fusion of Canada and United States into the complex. We're going to mass finance healthcare, mass finance the rehabilitation of our brothers and sisters, of course, for criminals who are willing and have the volition to be rehabilitated by allocating some housing, social housing, and rebuild the ghettos. We're going to rebuild the ghettos. We're going to rebuild the ghettos. We are going to rebuild the ghettos and mass finance fitness, and we are going to create the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act. And my brothers and sisters who lost their liberty, we're going to need to get building those 44 tunnels together. We're going to open up all the fast food and the other public-private partnership to secure food security and build mega structures, of course, for us, of course, to continue to have the implementation of our protocols and, of course, our fellow citizens' salvation via the DRT, the debt refusion theory. And that's what we need to be doing together in the North American Collective as we go. Pledge your allegiance to our family, and that is basically where the rock and roll song is about to end on this one, the DRT. And we're going to create the 2 complementary, covered and non-cooperative institutions, the Dragon Army, aka Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Imperial Integrated Dance League for the environmental action and education, also known as the DGA, parallel complementary to the Dragon Army, aka the Imperial Integrated SSD, or Security Service and Defense Legion. Gonna fuse the armies and mobilize 1% for every new state. The 63 of our empire is gonna have 1% mobilization to serve as the Legion, for integrate with all security apparatus. We're gonna fuse the RCMP and the FBI also with it in the Imperial Republic's police force, or police special service. So we're gonna mass integrate across all levels. We're gonna rehabilitate the millions of our population, and we're gonna get that coast to coast, ocean to ocean. And in geopolitics now today, what alarms me is that we have been designated by the United States since April 1st as an unusual, it's been 2 weeks now, as an unusual and extraordinary threat. And of course, maybe not that much fentanyl goes, but enough goes that could kill potentially millions. And more I'm thinking that this fentanyl is not a drug. It's more like a bioweapon, because it doesn't make sense, right? You would want somebody who's a drug producer, drug dealer, drug trader, that the person keeps on buying every, I don't know, whatever, it's the buyers. But it seems that if there's plenty of so much overdoses from this fentanyl, that it doesn't seem that it's a drug to make wealthy and money with it. You know what I'm saying? It seems that there's so much death and it's so lethal that it seems more like a bioweapon than a drug, this fentanyl. And of course, we have to be realistic and have to accord that on the 24th of October last year, the RCMP dismantled the biggest ever super lab ever. So now, by the United States government and the Trump administration, the official dictum, you can check it on the website whitehouse.gov, the justification of increasing the tariffs on Canada. And this is something I did not predict. I predicted a World War III scenario, but I did not predict, of course, that there's going to be an international conflagration. So that I did not predict. That I did not predict. That I did not predict. So of course, that was not my prediction. That was not my prediction, you know. So of course, that was not my prediction. That was not my prediction. I predicted there's going to be a World War III, but I did not predict the current deterioration of relations with the United States. So let's implement the DRT, create these two complementary, fuse the RCMP and the FBI, get rid of the border, create a common currency, and we need to mass finance healthcare also. It needs to be opening our land, the resources, and your population. We need to be making a great new deal, a great 21st century new deal. We're gonna do the BD, total benevolent dominance and dominion, but we're gonna be like two heads, two faces. With also we need to punish, right? We need to have some justice, some righteousness. Centrist, best, from the 21st century, public-private partnership, the DRT, debt refusion treaty, the creation of the UE. We're going to fuse Canada and United States, and then all our allies who will to, of course, join us. And now we're going to switch to that French because we're in La Belle Province. So let's rock and roll a little bit. I'm going to put my glasses here because I'm in the dark, and you see sometimes, I guess, some people decide to go by the biking because they have the lights and they're safe, and just be careful here because branches fall. Here on top where the rocks are, we're gonna here at the top of the rocks where the rocks are. So here we are now. French en français, on est rendu déjà sur la montagne. Quelque cause, je vous encourage à faire l'entraînement physique. L'entraînement physique a été, ça sera ma thérapie de choix, puis on s'en va bien sûr vers un petit entraînement pour avoir sur la montagne ce 15 août, où il y a bien sûr la rencontre de Vladimir Poutine avec bien sûr Donald Trump. Fait que c'est quelque chose que moi-même, en étant bien sûr un artiste, athlète et bien sûr un penseur indépendant, théoricien dans la géopolitique indépendant, c'est sûr que ça a fait du bien qu'il y ait une rencontre, mais même que ça me concerne un peu. J'ai des questions pourquoi Zelensky n'a pas été bien sûr invité. C'est quelque chose que je n'ai pas bien de l'espoir, à vrai vous dire. Là. Je ne sais pas exactement ce qui va arriver. Je vais voir ce soir qu'est-ce qui est arrivé, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont dit, qu'est-ce qu'ils ont conclu à Alaska. Mais c'est quand même, en tant qu'analyste théoricien en géopolitique et penseur et stratège, bien sûr, c'est quelque chose que moi-même je en consulte, puis bien sûr que ici, en faisant l'entraînement sur la montagne, dans la deuxième maison, ma maîtresse, que je vous encourage bien sûr à faire dans le point de contention au qu'on est rendu, que j'ai prévu, hein. Je vous dis encore, je répète, que moi-même, j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant, là, de manière générale, en 2019, en octobre, en octobre 2019, ça fait plus que 5 ans, j'ai prévu qu'il y aura une troisième guerre mondiale. Comme qu'on voit aujourd'hui, c'est sûr qu'il n'y a pas à chaque détail, mais d'une manière généralement parlant, j'ai prévu la situation actuelle. Puis moi-même, vous savez que j'ai une condition neurologique qui s'appelle l'Asperger's. Donc, à cause de ces Asperger's, nous, les Aspis, on constitue une petite minorité de population, moins de 1%, à peu près 0,44%, fait que même pas la moitié d'un pourcentage. Fait qu'il y a bien des gens qui ne savent pas c'est quoi, mais il faut toujours commencer par dire que c'est pas une maladie. Hein. Comme je corrige souvent des gens qui disent une maladie. La semaine passée, j'ai dû corriger un concitoyen, je ne sais pas s'il était citoyen ou non, mais j'avais dit bien sûr que je ne savais pas bien sûr si c'était un citoyen ou non, mais c'est sûr que j'avais dû corriger 2 fois. Puis après ça, il a dit, ah oui, c'est vrai, c'est une condition neurologique. Puis je dis, oui, exactement, c'est pas une maladie, l'Asperger's, c'est une condition neurologique. Ça fait que la manière qu'on discute, qu'on interagit, bien sûr, des fois de la communication, c'est un peu plus... Ça peut être un peu plus intellectuel, un peu sophistiqué, comme ça peut être un peu académique dans certaines choses, mais c'est sûr qu'on manque aussi on manque de savoir les normes de la société des fois. C'est parce que nous, là, les Asperger's, notre cerveau, il y a des mutations. Fait qu'à cause de ces mutations-là, on voit le monde différemment. Fait que la plupart de nos quotidiens, les jours, là, ça se préoccupe comme on a des routines rituelles, des routines comme rituels. Là. Puis on se préoccupe tellement dans les choses, nos intérêts spéciaux, aussi connus comme intérêts obsessifs. Mais moi, si j'utilise le mot obsession, là, c'est pas pareil qu'une obsession parce que c'est des intérêts spéciaux. Puis moi-même, quand j'étudie, j'écoute des nouvelles du Québec, du Canada, des États-Unis et à travers le monde. Puis bien sûr, c'est intense, c'est concentré, mais c'est aussi à travers le monde. Fait que quand je passe des heures en faisant des analyses reliées à la géopolitique, parce qu'il y a des événements au quotidien, hein, puis c'est à travers le monde, il y a tellement de pays, tellement d'organisations, tellement d'événements au quotidien, des conflits du passé, de l'histoire, qu'il y a tellement de choses à apprendre de la géopolitique. C'est un univers eux-mêmes. Puis nous, je dis souvent qu'ici, en Amérique du Nord, on a fait ce que j'appelle le grand compromis linguistique. Puis juste cela, ça constitue juste une idée, une théorie, puis une vérité géopolitique. Hein. Au Québec, au Canada, en Amérique du Nord, si on dit, parce qu'on constitue un collectif de civilisation de l'Amérique du Nord. On a fait le grand compromis linguistique, bien sûr, puis on se donne, bien sûr, à avoir ce grand compromis linguistique. Donc, on est aussi un nouveau collectif, hein, parce que on est une nouvelle civilisation dans le même point de vue. Là, on est une civilisation émergente. On est une civilisation, un collectif de civilisation qui n'est pas tout à fait divorcé de l'Occident, mais on a des distinctions avec l'Occident. Fait que c'est des choses, bien sûr, qui ressortent de comment connaître d'une manière socioculturelle. On n'est pas divorcé de l'Occident, de la civilisation occidentale, qu'est-ce qu'on appelle la grande civilisation occidentale, là. On n'est pas divorcé, mais on a des distinctions. Fait qu'il y a certaines distinctions. Des fois, c'est bien sûr, ça se rapproche à être bien sûr plus visible. C'est des fois, on peut voir que c'est quand même visible dans certaines choses qu'on vit, bien sûr, du quotidien, bien sûr, dans cette proposition de vivre de cette manière. Fait que bon, avec ces distinctions, c'est sûr qu'on n'a pas de divorce, mais on est relatif à la civilisation occidentale, mais on est une nouvelle civilisation qui émergente, parce qu'on a notre propre... On est un collectif nord-américain, fait qu'on a un destin commun aussi quand même pour dire bien sûr de cette manière. Fait que moi je suis bon dans la géopolitique, dans le rock and roll, l'entraînement physique, la danse c'est l'entraînement physique que je préfère, mais à comme bien des Aspis, des Asperger's, bien sûr, on a de la misère dans la compréhension sociale pour être à vrai dire, pour être bien sûr de la sociale, qu'on soit bien sûr de la point d'envergure, pour être bien sûr dans ce point de compromis où qu'on vit maintenant bien de l'être, puis que bien sûr j'avais prévu bien sûr la situation actuelle qui se déroule en ce moment pour l'être bien sûr dans ce point de situation critique où bien sûr qu'on est rendu à avoir bien sûr de certaines modernités puis modalités à être bien sûr dans ce point de convergence, à être bien sûr de cette manière neurotypique parce que les manières puis vous, les neurotypiques, vous constituez 99 bien sûr des pourcentages, bien sûr 99%, là, c'est quand même un gros pourcentage, les 99%, 99,56% comparé à nous bien sûr à 0,44%, tu sais. Ça fait que c'est 0,44%, bien sûr que ça fasse dans le domaine, bien sûr, d'avoir une concordance, bien sûr, pour le faire de cet entraînement physique, bien sûr, qui pense, bien sûr, avoir une heure. Vivre, c'est bien sûr que je dois m'hydrater maintenant, remerciant les travailleurs publics, les camionneurs, les boulangers, les infirmières, les travailleurs en construction sur les grues, bien sûr, les travailleurs sur le train, bien sûr, les camionneurs qui transportent, bien sûr, les biens. Puis moi-même, je me suis acheté ce qu'on appelle du halva. J'ai trouvé ça sur le marché durant la COVID, puis depuis comme 4 ans, j'en achète, là, c'est pas cher, puis c'est comme un désert, bien sûr, que ça fait avec le tournesol, bien sûr, de cette manière d'avoir du compromis, bien sûr, dans le point de situation, bien sûr, pour être ici en Vergeur, bien sûr, sur la montagne, sur le Mont-Royal, qu'on est quand même, je suis jovial, quand même joyeux, je vis juste un stress financièrement, là, je vis un stress financier, mais à part ça, ça va, tu sais, je suis toujours ouvert pour les affaires, puis c'est sûr que moi, il faut me le dire, des fois, tu sais, comme si je parle trop, si je parle d'un sujet qui vous intéresse pas, puis nous, les Aspergers, on n'a pas bien des amis, j'en veux pas d'amis, vraiment, là, je suis jovial, mais juste des amis avec bénéfice. Si vous avez 18 ans et plus, je fais partie aussi de la communauté LGBTQ, tu sais. Je suis monsieur, madame, à cause de mes réincarnations, bien sûr, madame, messieurs, fait que toujours au service. J'ai été né ici en tant que femme dans une autre vie, j'ai vécu sur la montagne, puis sur l'île de Montréal, entre 1688 et 1688 et 1688 et 1744, bien sûr, c'est de cette manière, bien sûr, que ça fasse dans ce point de convergence pour être, bien sûr, ici, pour le faire, bien sûr, dans ce point de convergence où on est rendu aussi à avoir, bien sûr, ces normes, ces protocoles, bien sûr, d'envisagement, puis de bien sûr, ce futur. Donc, j'ai beaucoup d'espoir, surtout quand je vois du monde en train de se donner des câlins puis en train de se tenir par la main. C'est quelque chose que j'envisage moi aussi, mais c'est bien sûr pour moi-même, les neurodivergents, les Aspergers, on a 3 problèmes qui nous touchent le plus. Puis ces 3 problèmes, c'est bien sûr le manque d'amis. Je n'ai pas besoin de beaucoup d'amis, mais juste des amis avec bénéfice seulement. Je ne veux pas perdre votre temps, perdez pas mon temps non plus, puis on ne se perd pas le temps ensemble. Fait que, bien sûr, des amis avec bénéfice, si vous voulez, on peut l'être des amis avec bénéfice. Sinon, bien sûr, on ne veut pas perdre votre temps, tu sais, on ne veut pas perdre votre temps, puis that's it, tu sais. That's it. Hey. On va montrer. Hein. C'était énorme. Ils vous ont montré. Fait que c'est ça pour l'intelligence. Les gens, hey, le raton, qu'est-ce que vous faites? Qu'est-ce que vous faites? Qu'est-ce que vous faites, raton laveur? Et bien sûr, c'est dans ce point de compromis, bien sûr. Je vous ai fait appel à tous de soutenir, bien sûr, la TRD, mais théorie, bien sûr. Théorie de la refusion de la dette pour la création de l'unité d'échange universel. Bien sûr, c'est des choses, bien sûr, qu'ils ont faites, bien sûr, pour en avoir dans ce point de contingence. Bien sûr, pour avoir une affaire à valoir, bien sûr, de cette modernité qu'ils vont faire, bien sûr, ensemble dans ce... Mais c'est beau, ça, c'est tellement beau, ça. Regardez comment c'est beau, ça, c'est énormément beau. Fait qu'ici, vous pouvez voir. Puis maintenant, on va chanter, bien sûr. On va rentrer sur le champ, comme ça. Ici, bien sûr, vous pouvez voir, bien sûr, pour le faire dans ce point de contingence, bien sûr, pour faire de la performance ici. C'est bien sûr la ville de Montréal. There we go, and that's what we got, eh? On va montrer, hein? Terrasse. Croate énorme. Et voilà, ça c'est la pyramide, bien sûr. Croate énorme. On va un peu le message. Fuck. I got the message, eh?
Hello, Dubai.
We don't need to buy. We got. That's what it is. They showed you, huh? Get ready for some cadence. Fait que là, je vais juste discuter, bien sûr, bien vite, parce que c'est plus important, bien sûr, que je la discute, la TRD, théorie de la revision de la dette, bien sûr, pour la faire dans ce point de compromis, bien sûr, pour qu'on rentre, bien sûr, ici, à être de cette manière, bien sûr, à vivre ensemble. Et c'est des choses, bien sûr, qu'on doit vivre ensemble avec le consensus et le concernement, d'où qu'on est rendu, bien sûr, à vivre ici dans ce point de convergence et de point, bien sûr, d'avoir, de faire. Et bien sûr, c'est la TRD que je vous encourage, la TRD. C'est ça la solution en ce moment. Puis là, je m'inquiète, bien sûr, parce que depuis 2 semaines, on est désigné comme une menace extraordinaire et hors commun par les États-Unis, hein. C'est sûr qu'il n'y a pas tellement de fentanyl qui passe, puis je me pose de plus en plus de questions si ce fentanyl-là, c'est pas vraiment... ça n'a pas l'air de la drogue, ça, pour moi. Ça a l'air plus que c'est quelque chose comme une arme bactériologique, hein. Moi, ça ressemble plus à une arme bactériologique qu'à une drogue. À vrai vous dire, là, mon sentiment, c'est que c'est même pas une drogue, ça. C'est comme une... c'est comme une arme bactériologique, parce que ça tue des gens. Ça fait pas de sens que ce soit une drogue, tu sais. si ça tue des gens, tu sais, les producteurs, les vendeurs devaient être pour pas que la personne en achète le plus possible, puis à longue durée, là, tu sais. Mais ça n'a pas l'air que c'est une drogue pour moi. Je pense que c'est plus comme une arme biologique, on pourrait dire. Là. Il y a de plus en plus de morts, tu sais, tellement de surdoses, des gens qui meurent à cause de ce fentanyl. Là. C'est quelque chose qui m'inquiète aussi. Puis là, depuis le 1er août, bien sûr, on est désigné comment, bien sûr. On est désigné, bien sûr, comment. On est désigné, bien sûr, comme un, c'est extraordinaire, tu sais. On est désigné, bien sûr, comme un extraordinaire, bien sûr. On est désigné comme un extraordinaire. Comme une menace extraordinaire pour les États-Unis, bien sûr. Comme une menace extraordinaire, bien sûr. Comme une menace extraordinaire, tu sais. Comme une menace extraordinaire. C'est ça qu'on est désigné par les États-Unis comme une menace extraordinaire. Depuis 2 semaines. Puis c'est ça que ça m'inquiète. Puis c'est ça que j'ai pas prévu. Hein. En 2019, en octobre, j'ai prévu une congrégation internationale, mais j'avais pas prévu la détérioration des relations avec les États-Unis. Puis c'est ça qui m'inquiète. Ça m'inquiète vraiment, là, parce que qu'on soit désigné comme une menace extraordinaire hors commun, ça m'inquiète vraiment, tu sais. Ça m'inquiète pour vrai vous dire. C'est une inquiétude, bien sûr, que moi-même j'en ai, bien sûr, dans le point de convergence. Et je vois, bien sûr, des lumières. Fait que c'est quelque chose, bien sûr, que ça a converti, bien sûr, d'avoir où je suis maintenant, dans la forêt, ma maîtresse, ma deuxième maison sur le Mont-Royal. Fait que même s'il n'y a pas tellement de fentanyl, ils disent qu'on a nos forces d'ordre, nos forces, bien sûr, de sécurité, la GRC, c'est comme le Bureau fédéral d'enquête, ils n'ont pas coopéré comme il faut avec les États-Unis. C'est ça que ça dit sur le site officiel de la Maison-Blanche, puis que tellement le fentanyl qui a passé en 2025, là, ça a dit que ça aurait pu tuer 16 millions d'Américains. Puis là, on est désigné officiellement, là, en anglais, c'est unusual and extraordinary threat, donc ça veut dire comme une menace hors commun et extraordinaire. Vous comprenez? Depuis le 1er août, on est désigné là, par les États-Unis comme une menace extraordinaire. Unusual, c'est hors commun. Non commune, hors commun, c'est hors norme, mais extraordinaire. On est désigné une menace, le Canada, là, une menace. Puis que le fentanyl qui a passé, ça aurait pu tuer 16 millions d'Américains. Puis bien sûr qu'on n'a pas coopéré bien comme il faut avec les forces de sécurité des États-Unis. Puis nous, là, notre premier intérêt, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis avant d'autres choses. Là. Notre premier intérêt, là, c'est d'avoir... Notre intérêt principal, fondamental, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis avant tout autre chose quand ça vient de la politique externe. Ça, c'est comme le symbole pi, tu sais, le pi en mathématiques, là, qui représente la relation entre le cercle et le diamètre. C'est comme un N comme normand, neutre, neurodivergent ou Normandie. Là. La lettre N, ça a 2 têtes, 2 visages. C'est pour ça que notre fusionner avec les États-Unis, ça va être comme 2 têtes, 2 faces impériales des États-Unis, puis bien sûr d'autres choses. Fait que c'est dans ce point de contingence où qu'on vit, où qu'on se trouve maintenant dans la situation, bien sûr, d'avoir vécu, de vivre ici. C'est quelque chose, bien sûr, que je dois vous dire, mentionner, que je m'inquiète pour nous. Là. Pour nous, je m'inquiète parce que ça, j'ai pas prévu. J'ai prévu une conflagration internationale, une 3e guerre mondiale, mais qu'on ait des relations de même avec les États-Unis. Puis c'est sûr que je suis pas un partisan de Trump, je ne sais pas, je suis un centriste. Mes idées, mes théories, bien sûr, sont pour la fusion du Canada et des États-Unis dans un complexe républicain impérial de partenariat public-privé solide et fort. Mais on est désigné de même. Depuis 2 semaines aujourd'hui, le 1er août, depuis le 1er août, c'était la justification d'augmentation des tarifs sur nous. Fait que moi, je suis pas bon dans d'autres choses, mais je suis bon dans la géopolitique. Puis ma TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, c'est super important qu'on commence à faire l'implémentation en plus tout de suite, avec la théorie, bien sûr, des protocoles du dragon pour le 9.1 de sécurité, service total intégré, des 10 provinces, 50 États et 3 territoires en concordium. Et bien sûr, pour que ça soit une union perpétuelle, mais avec un partenariat public-privé solide, parce qu'on va ouvrir nos ressources, nos territoires, puis on va amasser, fusionner ensemble une grosse population, tu sais, avec un gros territoire. Fait que c'est dans ce point de contingence et dans ce point de solution, bien sûr, qu'on est rendu aujourd'hui, bien sûr, pour le faire dans ce point de compromis, bien sûr, pour qu'on soit solide dans ces affaires, bien sûr, d'où qu'on est rendu aujourd'hui à faire dans ce point de contingence puis de fusionnement. Fait que dans ce point où qu'on vit aujourd'hui, spécial, intégré, super intégré avec tous les intérêts possibles qui existent de cette manière ou qu'on ait le fusionnement ensemble, de faire bien sûr dans ce point de marche de contingence, bien sûr, pour les vivre aujourd'hui, c'est sûr qu'on doit le faire. Bien, là qu'on soit désigné comme une menace hors commune et extraordinaire, c'est inquiétant, hein? Puis bien sûr, même s'il n'y a pas tellement de fentanyl qui va de chez nous, c'est sûr que la GRC nous a avertis pendant des années. Ça fait longtemps que la GRC nous avertisse. Ils sonnent l'alarme comme depuis moi que j'ai sonné l'alarme. Depuis 2019, j'ai la preuve, hein? J'ai la preuve, j'ai les vidéos en ligne qui discutent que j'ai prévu la situation actuelle de 2019, d'octobre à novembre 2019, qui bien sûr ayant prévu la situation qui se déroule en ce moment depuis octobre 2019. De manière générale, de la géopolitique internationale, j'avais prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant de manière générale, par chaque détail, par exemple. Et bien sûr, là, j'ai pas prévu qu'il y aura une détérioration des relations avec les États-Unis comme qu'il y a maintenant. Puis là, bien sûr, c'est problématique parce que la GRC nous a avertis, hein. Ça fait des années que la GRC sonne l'alarme, dit il y a de plus en plus de crimes transnationaux, des syndicats de criminels organisés transnationaux qui s'implémentent chez nous. Il y a de plus en plus de crimes d'organisations transnationaux qui s'implémentent chez nous. Il y a de plus en plus de criminels, de crimes transnationaux organisés qui s'implémentent chez nous. Il y a de plus en plus de criminels, des groupes criminels hors transnationaux d'autres mers qui s'établissent. C'était ça leur avertissement, ça fait longtemps qu'ils nous avertissent. Puis l'année passée, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé? Le 24 octobre 2024, la GRC, ils ont découvert un super laboratoire. La GRC ont découvert un super laboratoire. Super laboratoire le 24 octobre 2024. Ils ont découvert un super laboratoire. Un super laboratoire. Le 24 octobre 2024, ils ont découvert, bien sûr, un laboratoire, bien sûr, qu'ils ont fait dans ce point de contingence, bien sûr, pour l'aide. Fait qu'ils ont découvert ce super laboratoire. Le 24 octobre, ils ont démantelé l'année passée le plus grand super laboratoire. Ils ont saisi 95 millions de pilules capsules de fentanyl qui auraient pu tuer, là, après les experts, 2 fois la population canadienne. Fait qu'il y a une vérité dans celle-là, que dans ce que Trump, l'administration de Trump, il nous reproche, qu'il y a de plus en plus de production domestique, puis des super laboratoires aux États-Unis. Ça, la GRC, ça a approuvé, vous verrez sur leur site, le 24 août, la saisie du super laboratoire de fentanyl, de drogue de fentanyl, le 24 octobre de l'année passée, là. Juste l'année passée, ça fait même pas un an. L'année passée, le 24, bien sûr, le 24 octobre, le 24 octobre. Puis bien sûr, ils ont saisi ça à Surrey, en Colombie-Britannique. Imaginez-vous, ça aurait pu tuer 2 fois la population canadienne, là. Si on est rendu à 44 millions, ça veut dire à 88 millions, là. Puis imaginez-vous comment c'est grave, c'est grave, là. Ça, c'est des cyclistes qui sont là avec les... Que vous voyez, la lumière, là, ça, c'est des cyclistes, parce que là, je suis dans la forêt, hein. Je suis dans la montagne, sur le Mont-Royal, je suis dans les ténèbres. Fait que, vous comprenez? C'est qu'on est en danger, là. Il y a un danger vis-à-vis des États-Unis parce qu'on est désigné comme une menace extraordinaire et hors commun, là. Ben, ils nous ont avertis, la GRC, ça fait des années qu'ils nous avertissent. On est dans une crise, là, de côte à côte. Il faut le dire, on est dans une crise. On est dans une crise. Puis, je n'ai pas toutes les réponses, mais vis-à-vis de la géopolitique, je fais appel. Mon rêve, c'est fondamentalement un appel à un partenariat public. Quand je dis le royaume de la déesse et du dragon qui danse, c'est fondamentalement un appel à un partenariat public-privé. C'est fondamentalement un appel à un partenariat public-privé. Puis dans ce partenariat public-privé, bien sûr, c'est quelque chose que toujours, je dois le dire de la même manière, bien sûr, que je le sois, bien sûr, de point d'envergence, de vivre, bien sûr, dans ce point où je suis moi-même aujourd'hui, et bien sûr, devant vivant en tant que moi-même que je suis, puis je le fasse, bien sûr, dans ce point de situation où je le vis, bien sûr. Maintenant, c'est quelque chose, bien sûr, que je dois le dire. Et bien sûr, dans ce point de convergence où que je suis, bien sûr, aujourd'hui, fait que c'est quelque chose, bien sûr, que moi, je dois le faire, bien sûr, dans ce point, de vous dire, puis vous parler de la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. La TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. La TRD, c'est quelque chose qu'il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation. La TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. la TRD. Pourquoi je dis? Parce que c'est binational, puis il faut qu'on le fasse avec les États-Unis, puis c'est une manière de se fusionner parce que on va... Sinon, ben, on est à un point de crise, là. Les 4 problèmes qui nous touchent le plus, le Québec, le Canada, les États-Unis, la majorité des citoyens, c'est ces 4 problèmes économiques. C'est pour ça que je dis que ma TRD, la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, c'est la solution. TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, car on a 4 problèmes qui nous touchent le plus. C'est bien sûr le coût de la vie qui augmente, les loyers qui augmentent, mais mon loyer a augmenté, mais je ne peux pas me plaindre parce que c'est entre 6 minimum et 10, je ne vais pas dire exactement c'est combien. Et bien sûr, la stagnation des salaires avec l'augmentation, parallèlement à l'augmentation du coût de la vie. Et bien sûr, le quatrième, ça peut être dans quel ordre que ça soit, mais ces 4 problèmes économiques, ça nous touche. C'est les cartes de crédit. Il y a un record pour les Canadiens et nos frères et sœurs aux États-Unis. Il y a un record de cartes de crédit, de surendettement. Fait que ça nous touche, ça. Moi-même, c'est avec l'Asperger's, dans ma communauté, on est à 80% de sans-emploi, puis ça, c'est quelque chose qu'il faut régler, blablabla. Mais j'ai de la gratitude parce que j'ai payé mon loyer, j'ai du café, j'ai du thé, j'ai payé ma facture d'électricité à Québec, à l'Hydro-Québec. J'ai payé, bien sûr, mon cellulaire. Fait que là, on est en mi-août. Et là, je vous discute. La TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation aussitôt. On est rendu dans un point de crise, on n'a pas bien le choix de faire l'implémentation de la T. RD. Fait que là, je vais vous en parler. La TRD. Car à cause de 4 problèmes. On va prendre toute la dette publique privée du Canada, on va faire la conversion de la devise des États-Unis. On va faire l'addition de toute la dette publique des États-Unis avec la dette des États-Unis. Fait qu'ensemble, on va faire la création de nouvelles banques, car dans ma TRD, ça contient la théorie d'intégration monétaire, ce qui est la théorie que les Européens ont fait l'implémentation dans les années 90 par la création de la Banque centrale européenne, puis bien sûr en faisant, bien sûr, la Banque centrale européenne et bien sûr en faisant la création de nouvelles monnaies, soit l'euro. Fait que dans ma TRD, c'est inclus cette théorie, TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, ça inclut la théorie d'intégration monétaire. Fait qu'on va faire la création de l'UI, on ne s'obstinera pas en anglais, c'est pareil, U point unité, E point échange, U point universel. U point unité, E point échange, U point universel. UI, l'unité d'échange universelle. U point unité, E point échange, U point universel. L'unité d'échange universelle aura la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. U point unité, E point échange, ou U point universel. L'unité d'échange universelle aura la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. On va mettre un taux d'intérêt de 10%, pas plus. Avec ça, on va rebâtir l'infrastructure du Québec, du Canada. On va financer les gens à l'entraînement physique. On va faire un grand recensement du Canada, des États-Unis. On va finir avec la frontière. On va fusionner impérialement, de manière républicaine impériale. Puis bien sûr, on va financer les gens à l'entraînement physique, au tourisme. On va bâtir les 44 tunnels dans le cas d'une guerre nucléaire, parce que c'est possible qu'il y ait une guerre nucléaire. Fait qu'on va fusionner ça. Et bien sûr, on va faire un grand recensement de la population puis de l'économie. On va faire la création d'un passeport commun. On va bâtir plus de centrales Hydro-Québec. On va rebâtir l'infrastructure. On va faire bien sûr un grand concordia pour la santé et la santé publique, et bien sûr financer les gens à l'entraînement physique ainsi que financer les gens au tourisme. Fait qu'on va faire un grand partenariat public-privé en faisant l'implémentation de la TRD pour la création d'une nouvelle monnaie puis d'une nouvelle banque centrale intégrée, comme qu'on fait en Europe, bien sûr. Et bien sûr, on va financer la défense, la sécurité et le service total par la création de 2 institutions de partenariat public-privé, soit l'armée du Dragon comme l'armée impériale pour la sécurité, service et défense, avec l'armée du Dragon, qu'elle soit parallèlement, bien sûr, avec la Ligue de danse intégrée, soit la Ligue de danse intégrée, soit l'armée de la déesse qui danse, prêtez allégeance les jours, vous êtes famille, bien sûr, prêtez allégeance les jours, vous êtes famille, pour ça que je sors maintenant, que je vais vous chanter les cadences, fait que ça va être un bon entraînement, que je vois bien sûr de la lumière, fait que on va chanter des cadences pour le faire, bien sûr, le faire dans ce point de contingence, bien sûr, que je fasse, bien sûr, dans ce point de contingence, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, de la faire de la concordance, bien sûr, pour le faire, bien sûr, de ce point de concordance, bien sûr, pour le questionnement qu'on a, bien sûr. Hey, let's go for the cadence, let's go for the cadence, for the cadence, for the cadence, Dragon Army. We gotta get it on the go. Let's go for my allies and armies, allies and armies, allies and armies. We gotta get it on the go. We gotta get it for the go, for the Dragon Army from forest, from the darkness to the light, from the darkness into the light, from the darkness and the light. Special Dragonomic cadence. From the darkness in the light, from the darkness in the light, from the darkness in the light. We gotta go on the go, and we gotta get it on the go with that, and we gotta get on that rock and roll to get it on that drill, you know, to get it on the go. We gotta get it on the, gotta get it on that left or right and center. We gotta get on that XYZ. We gotta get it for that drill. Gotta get it for now, you know. So that's what we're gonna get drilling, and let's go drill, 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 drill. Dragonomy. Cadence Pettit Freestyle Mode 15th of August 2025. Only listen if you're Dragonomy. Pledge your legions. From the darkness into the light, though you know it might. On the steps and in the sight, you know that we play it right. Let's go for the cadence, hear that rock and roll as we go on the road. Hey, for the 63 and the stars that we be, for the fusion of our empire, gotta go a little higher. We cannot be bribed, we cannot be bought. We gotta be paid, and that's because we slay. We cannot be bought, we cannot be paid. That is cause we slay. We cannot be bought, we cannot be paid, and that is cause we slay. Cannot be bought, we cannot be paid, and that is cause we slay. Hey. Got some lights and got a shadow, and you know we got us. Sing it, rock and roll, as we go tiptoe up in the road. Firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, plumbers, and the electricians. And you know we gotta whisper. From the coast to coast we empire, for the 10, the 50, and the 3. That our empire let it be. For the Alabama and Atlanta, gotta sing it for Alaska. For Quebec, Ontario, gotta give it as you go. For the lovers and the butchers and the train conductors, gotta sing it so you go, gotta sing it so you flow. For the left and right we see, for the left and right we be, and you and me, we the dragon army. Some of our dragons are black, some of our dragons are white, some of our dragons are black, white, some of our dragons are rainbow, just so that you gotta know. Let me see you, let me hear you, so that you ain't gotta see it. And you know we gotta be it, for the left and right and see it. And you know we gotta drum it. Hey, we gotta get it on it. Hey, for the left and right we beat. Dragon arm in harmony. For the left and right we be. Dragon arm in harmony. Hey, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean. Gotta get it so you see. Hey, you know that's me, you ain't gotta be. Hey, we got those oceans. Hey, we got those oceans. Coast to coast, we gotta hike. Hey, we going down the stairs. Sometimes we just come out of our lairs. We got some butchers. We got some nurses, train conductors, got some nurses, train conductors, some electricians, plumbers, and some electricians, plumbers, got some nurses and some doctors, electricians and the plumbers, got some trains, got some bus drivers, gotta give it so you lanes. And you know we gotta save for the truckers every day. Hey, you know they gonna collect. Sanitation workers gotta sing a little cadence for those picking of our garbage across the empire. For the workers, got some welders, got some truckers, got some train conductors. Got some of those flipping burgers, flipping burgers. Hey, you need some double cheese. Where the service that we be. Dragon Army 40 SSD. For the service that we be. Dragon Army that we be. For the service that we be. Dragon Army that we be. For the service that we be. Dragon Army that we be. For the service that we be. Gotta wait for lights and light. Gotta wait for lights and light. So that you know that we sight. Gotta wait for lights to cross. That you know that we arrived. We got. Give me some B, British Columbia. Give me some states, you know, we California with a C. Gotta be and gotta live it. Gotta live it for you see. Gotta give it for you see. Left or right and I'm set. For you know just be the best. And we got some get a C. Gotta get it so you be. Got the D for Delaware. Got some G for Georgia's lair. Got some T for Tennessee. Got some Nova Scotia B. Got some T. Got some left and right in sight. Got some Q in Quebec. Got some QE in Quebec. Got some QE in Quebec. I got some da Manitoba, got some da Mississippi, got some got some Montana, got some that Alaska, got some that Alberta, got some that Arkansas, that Alaska gotta see, so you know you with me. Got some Dakotas, that's the North and South Dakota, got some water, got some oceans. Got some valleys, got some rivers, got some waters, got some oceans, got some valleys, got some rivers, oceans, plumbers, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, farmers, hummers, nurses, doctors, farmers, hummers, got some ocean, got some potions, we don't need no magic potion. Dragonomic cadence, special freestyle mode. Gotta whisper it a bit because now we're going more, of course, in the wilderness to get on the left or right and XYZ, and we gotta get on that rock and roll, you know, for the bakers, butchers, nurses, doctors, and firefighters, plumbers, electricians, the welders, train conductors, always for the 63. That's just how we be for the 63, and just that's how we rock and roll it, and that's just how we flow with it. It's 15th of August. Special Dragonomic cadence, the 50s something since I started in 2025, the special cadence on the go, and that is something which we gotta keep on apple it, and of course in the symmetry where we have, of course, in the left or right and in the spectrum here on the going back to my headquarters in the east from the west going to the I mean we're coming from the east, we're going towards the west now. The west, that's where we're heading, you know, west and east and east and west and south, and that's just where we go, and that's where we're gonna go be with that, and that's where we gotta get on the left, right, Z, and that's where we have to be, you know. So that's where it is, the cadence. Let's go rock and roll. Cadence, it is our sentence, that is our justice. Dragonomic cadence for the empire, here we rising. Hey, we hail the priestess that you be. Priestess that you be. For the dragons, God bless. Goddess kiss and God bless. Some of my dragons are dragonesses. Some of our 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 dragons are dragonesses. Gotta see so that you be. A and A plus B. Where's the C? Got that D, that Delaware. And you know we got that W, that's Wisconsin. Got that Washington, where is the state? Maybe there's some grapes. Hey, yeah, 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 yeah. We got some G, we got some Georgia. We got some N, we got New York, and then New Jersey. We got some M, we got some Maine. We don't need too much of that pain. Dragonomic in special freestyle mode. For the public workers, they be changing aqueducts. Public workers gotta sing it, they be changing aqueducts. Public workers gotta work it, gotta switch it, cause they got some pot them holes. Gotta fill them pot and holes, let the cars be on the go. Gotta fill those pot and holes, let the pot be on the hole. And you know we gotta be it, we gotta be it. On the left and right we see it, for the and the butchers, for the train conductors, live with it. And you know we got a cadence it. And that is our sentence, Dragon Army, that's our cadence. We are lovers, we are butchers, we are bakers, we are cooks. We are clean, nothing to look. Got a shovel, got some dirt. Got some golden construction workers on steel toes, building Wall Street up and go. For the skyscrapers and the builders, ambulance workers and the firefighters, gotta sing that little cadence. For our firefighters of the empire, gotta sing our little cadence. For our firefighters of the empire, gotta sing that little cadence. For our firefighters of the empire, gotta sing that little cadence. So that you gotta see where we. That is the dragon army. Got some cadence that you see, got some cadence that you be. That is our dragon army cadence. Gotta sing it with some fragrance, gotta sing it with some fragrance. Where you know you gotta see, and you know you gotta be. Left and right we turn it like a snake, we know you heard. Just I'm playing with some gridiron, with some dancing, with some teeth. On the feet, you know we go, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. For the 63 we potion, we stand on guard for the empire. We stand on guard for the empire. We got that Imperial guards. We got those Imperial guards. We got those Imperial guards. Gotta see it, plenty of scars. Got those Imperial guards, gotta see it, plenty of scars. So that you know, some are red and some are gold. Got a cadence for you fold, got a cadence so you know, ain't no need. Gotta sing it for the blues, gotta sing it rock and roll. Tennessee, that Kentucky. KK, we got Kentucky, and we got some Kansas, double trouble Kansas, and Kentucky gonna hear us as we're going up to Yukon. Yukon, Northwest Territories, got the 63, that Nova Scotia. Got the Nova Scotia Prince Edward County, they be going train to train, that you know they switching lanes, and you know they feel the pain. Hey, got some muscle, got some brains, that's the cadence every day. On the lanes we switch it up, so you know we on the clock. With a head of a hawk, with a heads we peck it like a hawk, hawk. HAWK, with the state that is the bird, so you know we dragon army. For those fast food workers flipping burgers. Hey, the daycare workers change some diapers. Hey, the daycare workers changing diapers. Daycare workers changing diapers. Got some of that cadence so that you see that is our sentence. For the daycare workers changing diapers. Gotta see and gotta be. On the blues you gotta live it, so you know you gotta see it. Left and right in harmony, so you know we gotta be. Where there's bees, you know there's honey. If there's bees, you know there's honey. Got a head up in the clock. Got a snake ready to hawk for the birds in the sky. Gotta sing it, that's a light. Gotta sing it so you'll be on the dragon. I'm in harmony for those deliveries. They make some food with it, delivering some food left and right. So you know you gotta see on the left and right you be for the left and right in harmony. Pressing on the steps you see left, right, and left and right, right and left and right and left. So you know we never leave. Dragon army coast to coast, empire, you know the role. Defense, SSD, security, service, and defense. That is Dragon Army for the empire, for our rising. Gotta be hey with us, singing of our cadence. Gotta be it, gotta plus, gotta see it, gotta must. Hey, 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 hey. See a shadow, see some lust. See a shadow, see some bust. See some stairs, got a dragons. Ain't nobody born a dragon. That's their motto, a draconis. In perpetuus imperium, gotta sing it, sing it, sing it. Clap those hands and feel those toes. We on the marching on the road. Got some stars that you can see. That's alright that you can be. Got some stars. Got some stars that you can see. Got some lights that you can be. Left or right in harmony. Got some stars that you might see. Marching, marching, marching steps. That's the dragons, we the best. Some of my dragons are black. Some of my dragons are white. None of my dragons are born a dragon. Some of my dragons are dragonesses. Spell that out, that double S's. For the butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, firefighters. Dragon Army Cadence created freestyle mode, 15th of August. Still got an hour and a half till I get back to my headquarters. My dragon's there before the Sabbath. You know even what time it is. And started filming about 93 minutes after my march, so I clicked in some hours before. So it's always double trouble, always. For the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the welders, pledge allegiance, legions. For the 63 in perpetual imperials, draconis, protect us. God bless. Got it? Kiss.